Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Hangouts and Headlines, September 15th, 2022. I hope everybody had a wonderful weekend Wednesday, as we like to call them here, where we don't do Hangouts and Headlines. And I've been seeing people collecting articles and things for us to discuss, both in the gaming side, which is traditionally the virtual legality side, and the other side, which we cover a lot in Hangouts and Headlines. But there was one specific set of reports that we knew we just had to cover, folks. It's been far too long since I have said the names Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, even though it seemed like I said them 200 to 300 times a day for a period of the channel there. And so we're going to go back and talk about, well, accusations about what folks are doing, misleading reports, misleading articles. And because we already have someone on YouTube who I happen to know and may or may not play Dungeons and Dragons with, go over this in a video of his own and then stay up all night just to be with you folks. I would like to introduce, I think for the first time in formal Hangouts and Headlines, because it's at a ridiculous time of day for him, Ian Runkle of Runkle of the Bailey. Ian, how you feeling, man?
Oh, you know, a little punchy, but...
and we love punchy Ian, don't we, folks?
This is not actually the first time. I think this is the second, because it is a ridiculous hour, but sometimes I keep weird hours. But this one I was like, I think I got to be there for this one.
Fantastic. No, I knew you'd been on Hangouts before, but I didn't know whether it was one of those long form ones where the day just kind of rolled into where you could get on here, or whether you had appeared early on. So if you have been on at 4:30 in the morning before, I apologize for not recognizing it in that introduction. But yeah, we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff. We're going to do a shorter Hangouts here just to start before we get into the headlines, because we do have like 7 million different angles we can take a look at on this thing. Because if you don't know, this entire article, this entire report series is about our good friend of the channel, friend of the people, Christopher Bouzy, and his Bot Sentinel institution, which is ostensibly, as you can tell from the title, designed around finding bots on Twitter, give or take, and doesn't do that anymore because he really wasn't finding the traction in the media. But we like to give, positive attributes to people. This dude is a master salesman who might or might not be watching this video as it stands. We know he watched Ian's video. And so we will see on that, of course, but he has gone out, as was promised at the end of the last time we discussed this individual, which if you want to follow this up after we watch or perform or do whatever you want to describe this as, this Hangouts and Headlines, we talked about it in a different Hangouts and Headlines from a little while back, July 19th, where it was reported very credulously that widespread targeted harassment against supporters of Amber Heard had happened. Now, in this particular instance, some reporters actually disclaimed that Bot Sentinel and Christopher Bouzy had been hired by Amber Heard for this purpose, give or take, even though they separated the report from it. And others did not. But you might recall us seeing these articles talking about this. We thought Variety did the best job with the headline, which describes it, then says, according to firm once hired by Heard's lawyers, et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of it, yeah,
it's actually better than most of them did.
Oh yeah, because mostly they would just take a percentage or a bullet point or what was in these reports and just report it as the gospel truth. And so in that particular video, we did 5 or 6 articles. It's like, no, that's too strong. That's too strong. That's too strong. And then Variety's like, yeah, okay. It says firm hired by Amber Heard lawyers. And I thought that was a good job. But at the end of that report, basically, there was a promise that they're looking at YouTube next. And so we knew this was coming. We knew this was coming out. We have seen emails floating around. Ian, I don't know if you got one or not, but we know that Taylor Lorenz at the Washington Post is covering this. We didn't know who would cover this kind of stuff first. But as it turns out, and we'll get to this, we're going to do some Hangouts first. Don't worry, people. I know that's what people like sometimes. The Rolling Stone went forward with this first. It also got copied in various places. I think there's a Jezebel article. I think there's other places that are going out with this too. And again, we'll get into the headlines more specifically in a bit. You got new report claims. You have a little bit less credulity being afforded these kinds of things. Still a little bit too much for my liking, especially as we see what's in the report itself. But maybe we're getting better. We'll see. But before we do that, here's Papa Hoeg coming in. I don't know when the last time is he watched the Hangouts and Headlines. Maybe he watched in the dark, trolling. No idea. Happy to be back on the trial of the century. Just kidding, but it's a lot of fun. Oh, is that what you're doing? Oh, is my father not watching my shows in favor of Rob's shows? Is that happening here? All right, Dad, we have to talk offline. Oh, getting into little jibes early in the morning. My goodness. Heather says he's definitely watching this video. Crying, laughing emoji. I don't know. It's early in the morning. It's hard to say. Ian, you think he's watching this video?
I'm gonna go with yes.
All right. WD Prescott.
I mean,
what?
He showed himself to really have a particular sort of fragile ego. I don't imagine he's the kind of guy who can let anything go that mentions his name.
Oh, well, I mean, hey, you know what? You put the report out there. You want the press. You want the coverage. Let's give it to him. I mean, that's what I say.
Yeah,
certainly when we make videos, we accept the good and the bad. Sometimes, folks, if I'm feeling really down, I don't go into the comments at all because a lot of them are nice, but some of them are not.
Oh yeah, no. There's always somebody in the comments who's just like, it's like somebody who just hates you for no reason from whatever. Like, okay, yeah.
Dude has the best idea. Do a thing to annoy YouTubers so they report on him and give him the clout. Yeah, no, he goes and he focuses on people. One of the really interesting things we're going to see in this report, more than the article, because the article doesn't actually talk about the report, it just kind of takes it on face, is that it's in a different context. It's pretty targeted harassment of like at least one specific dude, and then realistically like two. And it's a bizarre take to make because they're making this report and saying this is endemic to YouTube. Like they try to frame it in the right way for getting publicity, which is, oh, this giant media corporation is making money on this horrible speech, and try to get to, an apocalypse, whatever it would be, 4, 7, 14. And that's a good way to do it if you're him, if you're trying to get that publicity. But you read it, I was actually a little uncomfortable with the framing of like, let's look at what this guy is doing, page after page after page. Let's look at this guy's doing page after page, page. It's like, well, yes. How many YouTube accounts are there? 20 million? I mean,
yeah. It's funny that this guy's like, hey, people are making money off targeted harassment, as he specifically calls out a few people over and over and over again for targeted. What was that word again?
It is. It's very specifically harassment. And in a litigation sense, one of the things that jumps out is like, oh, that's kind of like what the anti-slap stuff would be defending against. I mean, like you're trying to shut them up. Then you're trying to say they're violating these terms of service. And when we talked about his doing this for Twitter, one of the things that jumped out, this isn't his first rodeo, it's not even his first rodeo back in July, is that Twitter had looked at a lot of what he had reported on and said, no, it's fine. And you can think one of two ways about that. You could think Twitter is a terrible steward of communications. I will agree. But they did say, no, sir. And we'll take a look at the actual harassment policies he sends us to, because they're not as chilling as he thinks. Yeah.
Yeah, and YouTube said, hey, we looked into everything that he mentioned, and we took down 2 videos.
It was 2, yeah.
So, I mean, he's saying, oh, there's all these endemic violations. It's like, is it though? Because,
Well, what he's identified, and again, it's all kind of spoiler stuff here, but in the report are statements that you might not agree with. In fact, I would be willing to bet that many folks won't agree with. And said this is YouTube spreading hate or whatever. But at least as described in many of the quotes, assuming, as Ian will point out when we get there, that they are accurately ascribed, which is an open question with what has been done with this report in certain respects. That's a bad thing that I don't agree with. I think that's a bad idea. Is that the kind of thing that YouTube should be banning? Is that the kind of thing that YouTube should be taking further action on, or are we going to have an actual, discussion forum and battle of ideas, and what is freedom of expression, and we can get into all sorts of stuff about those things. And it looks like Mr. Bouzy wants none of it, based on the Twitter exchanges that I saw with him and Ian while prepping this video. So we will see. Before we do, though, I want to give a special warm welcome to Secret McSquirrel in the chat. I want you to know, Secret McSquirrel, that a number of folks noticed your absence for a number of days here, and everybody's very excited to see you again. So thank you so much for the work you do moderating here. If you do see her in the chat, say hi. It's lovely to have her back. And again, all the mods do such fantastic work and keep things on track. So we can discuss very complicated things, very sensitive things, and avoid ad hominems and have a reasonable minds can differ attitude. So thank you to all of them. And it is wonderful to see them. How's everybody doing? Where's everybody hanging out? What's going on this morning on a Thursday? We got about 5 minutes before we have to dive into like 16 tabs. So I want to hear from you because it is a fantastic Thursday, and it's so great to have Ian here. YouTube barely recommended Tug. That would be that umbrella guy who you may have heard referenced in the YouTube video. That is going to be one of the reference points we talk about in discussing this report. I only started seeing him when I looked deeper at the trial. Sure. Yeah, who knows what great mysteries the fates of the YouTube algorithm weave. I have no idea. Whenever it likes to recommend me my own videos, which admittedly, I have an ego. So that guy's great, but I don't really need to see him.
It's like I was kind of there, and then I kind of did the editing, and the last thing I want to do is watch it one more time.
No, there's a great, when you hear like behind the scenes interviews or something of like an actor's like, I don't want to watch myself in movies. It's like, I get it.
Well, it's not even that, because we also have to do our, like, at least I do my own editing. So by the time I've gone through and been like, that 20 seconds silence where I was looking for something on the page that needs to go, it's like, I don't want to watch this again.
Yep. No, there's no love there. It's a process. That's the thing. You put a video up, it's like, well, it's, whatever. It's 25 minutes, something short. It's like, yeah, it was probably 3 hours, 4 hours at least. I mean, like, it's just what it takes to get something up.
And when I watch them again, everybody's like, oh, that's such a great video. But if I try to watch it, all I see is all the things I think are mistakes strung together with like Charlie Brown, like the tuba noises for his teacher, and then mistake, and then tuba noise. That's
creators are hardest on themselves. There's no question. I often think, oh, I should have gone in this direction. Oh, I should have added this bit of clarity, like that kind of thing. And if it rises to a high enough level, that's where you see me update the pinned tweet or pinned comment, I guess. But we got a lot of good places here. We saw in Alabama, we saw Texas, Metro Detroit, a lot of Michiganders, Roanoke, Virginia. Nice. Dad says, love Secret McSquirrel. Great work. Rarely credited. Well done. Absolutely. Lovely to have her back. Ohio checking in. Tug was how I was brought into the case years ago. Yep. I think that happened for a number of people. What else we got going on? Elaine mentioned Tug more than YouTube did. He was mentioned a lot.
Well, I mean, the best thing that could have happened to the guy was Elaine mentioning him in court. Like, that's, I mean, I'm sitting
there. I think we all reacted to that. It's like, oh, that's engagement.
Yeah.
There's only about 10 million people watching this right now.
Yeah, it's like, okay, maybe you could mention my channel next.
What bad things do you have to say about Bailey?
Exactly.
Janice says they were here first and then found everybody else. YouTube is awesome now. That is awesome. Absolutely. Nice. That's how it all works. Is you find one of us and we suck you in. Let's see here. Even if you don't like the content of a YouTuber, what happened to just not watching it? Why they need to ban everything we don't like? That's an open question for some of this stuff. And from YouTube's perspective, they have a business interest. If the advertisers create a problem, Bot Sentinel has an interest in getting its name known out there. It's known by a lot of folks because it definitely has the contacts. It gets into these articles at major publications, right? I mean, if we're going to be very positive about at least one attribute of Mr. Bouzy's work is he can get pub. And there's no doubt about that. Now, Can he monetize that in a cognizable fashion? I don't know. I don't know exactly what he's doing with it, but he's mentioned every 3 months, every 4 months in one or more of these various publications. So he's good at marketing himself.
Although eventually I imagine the marketing is going to turn around and he's going to start getting some press he doesn't like. And that'll be an interesting day.
Yeah, well, like I said, I think that Rolling Stone claims is stronger than we saw in July, which is stronger than we saw in, I think, February was when the Meghan Markle report came out. So he's going to try to combine all the stuff he's already done into a new report. And I'm going to be honest with you folks. We're going to look at this. We're going to be skipping a lot of pages because in this report, there is what I would say is, do you know when you're in school, Ian, and they say the report has to be 20 pages and they're very careful. They set the margins and the font type and things like that. Part of this report to me feels like, I want to get to like 30 pages. I want to make it feel real. And so we're going to really stuff that with nonsense. And we'll see that. There's a lot to skip, which is always good, right? When you're looking at something you have to read for a client or otherwise, it's like, oh, a lot of this is pointless. Lovely. We're going to get through it even faster. But just as a word of warning, there is what I would call filler in this document, just to get to lengths. All right, everybody, let's talk about this thing. We've set it up enough. Let's talk about YouTube cashing in on misogyny, racism, and targeted harassment. Rolling Stone, in an exclusive interview, Bot Sentinel founder Christopher Bouzy explains how the video sharing giant seems to be profiting off hate speech. Now, we have a couple of points of clarity here. Hate speech is a traditionally amorphous kind of concept. It's not terribly loved by lawyers that are worried about things like freedom of speech and First Amendment concerns and whatnot. But, it's something that people can kind of recognize, maybe. Misogyny may or may not be hate speech. It depends on its form. But we have this as the exact phrasing here from the heading and subheading. And I'm not sure that it quite gets to what they want to say in the subheading. So you've got that kind of disconnect. We see this from time to time. This is what Rolling Stone wants in their Twitter. This is what they want you to see. They are assuming properly that a giant chunk of the audience is not going to click through to this. And this is kind of how these reports work. We've seen that in the past, which is you skip new report claims and you're going through it on Twitter and you get to, well, YouTube is cashing in on misogyny, racism, and targeted harassment. Now, the other aspect of this, Ian, is that, well, to some extent, that's true, right? There's 20 million accounts. There are bad actors in any large enough organization. And YouTube, is YouTube deliberately promoting those? Is it making it more likely? That's where we get into the fights with the Cat 10 Barges of the world or the Taylor Lorenzes. And that isn't even actually argued here. Instead of, so we've got different gradations of argument, I would argue. Instead of Cat 10 Barge and Taylor Lorenz saying YouTube's algorithms and Magic Black Box are actually making people pick Johnny Depp's side, making people say these things because it's giving them more engagement. And look, I agree with that giggle. I agree with that silliness there, but I think that is at least more tenable of a concept to drag YouTube under the bus than just there are bad people doing bad things on a platform that is open, free, and accepts anybody. And we'll see that some of the accounts that they name here are going to have 2,000 subscribers. I mean, like you're plucking things out to make your point, and it's like, all right, we need to agree on a standard of influencing here on the platform of something north of 2,000 subscribers, right?
I mean, it was a big day when my first channel hit 2,000 subscribers.
Yes.
But to say that I had influence at that point, like if I walk into a restaurant and I'm like, I have 2,000 subscribers on my YouTube, they'll say, great. Have we,
tell it to the maitre d'. Oh, you're out of seats. Well, do you know I have 2,000 subscribers?
It's like, oh, well, right this way, sir. And they lead you out. They lead you through the back door and they slam the door behind you. And you're stuck in the alley going, wait, what just happened?
Yeah, it's not terribly convincing, is it? So it's one of those things where, we talk about lies, damn lies, statistics, that kind of thing. You can pluck from a group of that huge amount of accounts whatever narrative you want. When you're a reporter, when we're going to be discussing these things, the thing I would ask for is a certain amount of questioning. What is your process? How does this come out?
Yeah.
What does this represent as a drop in the pool? Talk to me about what's specifically happening here, because okay, we can all agree there's bad actors in every single organization past X amount of size, because it's human beings and you have a free platform and that's going to happen. And this seems to be advocating, at the end of all things here, for YouTube to be doing other things with its policies. It's a little bit unclear. So we have kind of the politician problem, which is we want you to do something. Okay, what does that look like? Whoa. I'm not a solver. You need to do something. And YouTube could easily say, okay, well, we're looking at these policies. We do actually market ourselves with a certain amount of respect for freedom of expression. We don't want to go too far on that. And there's definitely laughter in the peanut gallery from everybody that's randomly banned on YouTube. And, we have the words that we try not to say in a row on this plot. So yes, all the laughter notwithstanding, we don't also like to be pushed around. The other aspect of this is, like, I think Twitter rejects a lot of what they say, what Bot Sentinel tells them, almost knee jerk. It's like, you're not going to tell us how to enforce our policies, dude. And so, yeah.
I mean, the other thing is, I think Twitter basically said that they looked over his work and weren't impressed.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you're saying there's all these problems. Well, let's look at your methods, and oh no, this is just garbage.
Yep.
So,
yep. No, that's exactly right.
And you always have to look at the sort of quality of advice you're getting, right? If somebody says, hey, this person you're dating is really bad news, you're going to weigh that differently if it's, your longtime trusted friend versus the crazy guy at the bus stop who's eating his own toenails as he sits there waiting. Like, these are you're going to put different amounts of weight on it. And I don't think he realizes that he's at bus stop crazy person levels. And the problem is the media don't seem to have clued in on it either.
Well, and that's where we get into the incentives, right? Like, I try to give the journalists the benefit of the doubt on a lot of this stuff, but they're trying to get clicks too, and we'll see that kind of ironically referenced in their own article. But let's take a look at what this is. The actual report. We're going to go through this. This is entitled "YouTube Policy Violations: How Hate Speech, Misogyny, Racism, Homophobia, Transphobia, Xenophobia, Targeted Harassment, and Widespread Copyright Infringement Goes Unchecked." One of those, by the way, if you're familiar with Sesame Street, is not like the others.
Yes.
And goes to the filler aspect of this. And if we were to be cynical about this report, we might say, it doesn't look like you were actually able to find enough of the really bad words you started with. So you threw in copyright infringement, to no one's surprise, who has ever been on YouTube ever. Content ID exists for a reason. It's because the YouTube doesn't have a great mechanism for blocking it out. And so they're constantly demonetizing and moving money and blocking and geofencing and things like this, because you invite the public to put something up. And to the public's credit, they're not intellectual property lawyers. They see these other videos on YouTube and they say, oh, I mean, I guess that long form cinematic reaction where I sit and watch The Phantom Menace and talk over it is okay. Yeah. It's not, but we have a mechanism for that. And so, note carefully kind of the 3-card Monty that goes on here, because it actually looks like he couldn't find enough stuff on the stuff that gets those headlines. But that doesn't stop him from giving these interviews to Rolling Stone and their mercurial relationship with the topic of YouTube. So,
and I mean, I look at, YouTube gives me like this channel copyright view where I can see some videos that have, and I mean, I've got a whole bunch of people who've uploaded one of my videos somewhere. And, so far I haven't bothered sending any takedown requests, because it's like, oh, you've got 96 subscribers. And actually that guy with 96 subscribers managed to get 1,000 views off one of my videos.
Your content's that good, Ian. Yeah, no. You know what? One of my favorites is there's a couple of channels that will take like one of mine, put the title of the video like in the middle of their title, put like a front and a back, and then do the same on their video. And it's like, wow, that's more editing than I did. What are you just make content? What are you doing? Yeah, it's YouTube, folks. If you don't know, maybe you don't want to know. But it is a crazy place. And finding out that it is a crazy place is not the awesome article that Mr. Bouzy might think it is. But let's look at how Rolling Stone reports on this, because this isn't just on the report. They actually got Mr. Bouzy to give a quote unquote exclusive interview. This is what you'll see most of the other reports reacting to, is this Rolling Stone interview. So let's discuss. On YouTube, engagement is king. Pause. I know we got one sentence in, right? We did great. We're doing great. It's going to be a 7-hour stream. Ian will be dead by the time it's over. This pause is, it's not wrong. Engagement is how these channels survive. Folks like you in chat, tell your friends, like, subscribe, ring bells, do all that great stuff, is part of this process, because that's basically how their software works. They look and say, hey, there are 623 people watching this idiot at 7:56 in the morning. Maybe there's something there. If you're chatting, that's great. If you're, clicking like buttons, that's great. If you're subscribing, that's great. They're looking for those kinds of things. Where I'm pausing this, however, is that this is Rolling Stone, pretty well known for reaching pretty far in some of their articles, perhaps some of their investigative journalism. I don't know if anybody is familiar with any recent cases that Rolling Stone might have gotten wildly wrong, but if you are, you can think of those now. And we know that engagement is king across anybody that's putting articles out there, whether they're op-eds or news articles or YouTube videos like this one, or YouTube videos that are analyzing the latest episode of She-Hulk. You want to have that content. So it's not wrong. It's also a little bit ironic, because it is coming from Rolling Stone. And it's like, yeah, we know. You're writing this. You got this exclusive interview for engagement. The platform, which thrives on its dual status as both a social media network and news space, pays creators handsomely, ? We can discuss, for making videos that get large amounts of views and interactions from any given audience. To keep the worst out, the sheer influx of content is moderated with a series of community guidelines that are intended to make YouTube a safer community, while still giving creators freedom, according to the site. Now, we're using an interesting, again, just in terms of journalism, would you consider having guidelines to be moderated? I consider moderation to be a more active step approach that requires intervention or enforcement of guidelines, not just having the guidelines themselves.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to act, moderation normally implies you're doing something about it.
Yeah, I think so.
Anybody can post up a sign like "keep off the grass," but if I don't actually chase the kids off my grass, then it's just a sign. So
right. So that's just interesting. We're just talking about reporting here. That's part of headlines. That's part of the recipe on this channel. But it's like, moderate is an interesting word. Their creators are paid handsomely. There is no doubt there are some wildly successful creators here. If I were doing this in lieu of my job, my family would all die. And I love you. I love you all. We cannot do it without support from folks like you. Check out the Utreon and the Patreon, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, if I were doing this for YouTube money, no. Yeah,
no, I am not at the point of quitting my job. I am at the point of I very much need to work, because I got dogs to feed and they like to eat.
Yeah, they do. It's a problem. But a new investigation by research firm Bot Sentinel found at least 24 YouTube channels with flagrant policy violations were allowed to continue posting without censure from YouTube moderators.
24?
They're still getting
paid.
Yes, 24.
Did they not stop and say, how many? I wonder how many YouTube channels there are.
Millions.
Yeah, if you're writing an article on this, it's kind of important to know this.
Well, and the real fun part is that 24 number, I think the vast bulk are in that copyright infringement list, right? We're going to get there, but I think it's 20 of them.
It's like saying, there's a gram of cyanide in my water. It really matters at this point if you're talking about a water bottle, in which case you're in some real trouble.
Sure.
Or the Great Lakes, in which case you don't care. At that point, it's so dilute that it doesn't matter. So
I like Callista here saying, look, I watch a lot of YouTube. If he only found 2 dozen, he wasn't doing a good job. I tend to agree with that, right?
Yeah.
That's the other level of incredulity here from Rolling Stone. It's like, wait, hold on. I feel like I could go on YouTube and just randomly pluck a topic out. Just type in Meghan Markle, just the royals, and pull up at least 2 dozen channels that are probably violating one or more of YouTube's amorphous policies.
Well, I mean, those aren't even where you'd go. You just, go
I
up.
don't want to go to where I don't know. I don't want to go where you'd send me to find the real stuff, Ian.
I mean, if you want to find any of this stuff, the thing is he wants to find stuff that is related to people who've hired him in the past. So whereas anyone else who's like, hey, I want to go find hate speech might go in and, type in, I don't know, Jews and just see, because I bet there's somebody on YouTube with an opinion about that is obnoxious and horrible.
Yeah,
I know
you definitely just name a group. Absolutely. So Kelly says, give me 10 minutes and I could quadruple it. Yeah, I mean, that's the nature of this thing, right? So that calls into question what we're looking at vis-a-vis the report. Ian posits that it's because it's related to folks that had previously hired him. It definitely is that in terms of Meghan Markle and Amber Heard. So, yeah. So that's you're reading this at Rolling Stone and you're looking at, okay, so we're describing YouTube in a way where everybody's rich and people are going to seat Ian at any table, regardless of whether there's space. And YouTube isn't doing anything about it. And we continue. In an exclusive interview, Bot Sentinel founder Christopher Bouzy tells Rolling Stone that the report uncovered a pattern of unchecked hate speech, which links to Rolling Stone's hate speech category. Fair enough. Misogyny, racism, and targeted harassment singularly focused on famous and identifiable women. The most mentioned women in the channels were Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, that's hard to say, British friends, and actress Amber Heard, both of whom have remained extremely vocal about the long-term mental and emotional effects of targeted harassment. In a review of just 5 single-purpose hate channels focused entirely on Markle, Bot Sentinel estimated the channels received a combined $42,000 in monthly payments. That's a huge amount of views for the record in terms of a YouTube number. Since all of the videos run with advertisements, it is understood that YouTube also receives a share of the profits. First of all, they do. They definitely do. But the fact...
a real chunk.
It is understood. The fact that this particular report on a specific platform doesn't do the legwork on this and just says, yeah, we think YouTube takes a cut. Okay. I mean, just square that circle. Yes, they do. It's in the it's in their terms and conditions.
It takes 8 seconds to not only find out that they take a cut, but you could actually get a breakdown of what cuts they take of what particular, things. You could.
Yeah, and understand for us, it's a bad deal in terms of an audit, right? We just get a number. It's like, we promise this is the number that's right. Okay. That's, whatever your cut was, whatever the baseline was, whatever the ad rates were that you sold at, whatever was offered to you, all this stuff is here's your number. Okay. All right, YouTube. But yes, YouTube takes a share of the profit. They do.
Yeah, they definitely do.
YouTube is to blame, Bouzy tells Rolling Stone. A lot of these folks would not do what they're doing if YouTube was not rewarding them. This is what I call the 10 barge Lorenz hypothesis. And let's be clear here. They are rewarding them. When you allow these folks to monetize this content, so we switched. Okay, we got to be careful to note this. Now, this is a quote. This isn't Rolling Stone. But this is, YouTube is rewarding them. That's 10 barge and Lorenz to allow. Okay? Yeah. So we've separated out the concepts, because YouTube actually saying, yeah, give me more of that misogyny. That's different from, we don't cut off people that don't cross a threshold. Right? Those are 2 different things that you're positing smacked next to each other when you give.
I love your YouTube voice.
Want to see some candy? Yeah. When you allow these folks to monetize this content and you're the company that is paying them, kind of the processor in that relationship. At the end of the day, you're pretty much facilitating the harassment. the vitriol that we're currently seeing. So rewarding them, then allowing them, and then you're facilitating it. We got to pick a standard. And no, we just want to put YouTube under a bucket that says they're bad. And God knows, look, folks, it'll take you 2 seconds to go look at Virtual Legality's playlist and see there's plenty of times when I've said YouTube is doing this wrong or doing that wrong, or these terms of service are ambiguous, and this is the trouble it can get you in, and what the hell are we doing with COPPA and everything else. So this is not me defending it purely because I'm a YouTuber, but I probably don't need to disclaim this separately. You will note you are watching this on YouTube. So I do have an existing relationship with this company. So that's worth noting. I do get paid. There will be a number associated with, as a for instance, this super chat. Jenny's getting inky with it. These journalists' lack of self-awareness is disconcerting. They don't seem to realize they're making money off of bad faith arguments. Right? So if we wanted to be ironic, we wanted to be meta-contextual, we could say, wow, engagement is king. You're just allowing this guy to spout whatever. You're not doing the analysis we do here at Hangouts and Headlines to even evaluate what is worthy of news attention, and you're getting clicks. You're selling ads. You're leading people to other articles or other daily newsletters or whatever you're selling here. The ads don't show up on the Internet Archive. One interesting thing about this, I don't like to use the archive for the most part, is that this was freely available yesterday. And this sometimes happens. When I came in here today, it was paywalled. I don't know what triggers those kinds of things. But we're looking at it here in this space because it was, I looked at the whole thing yesterday, and I try to prep the videos with links and references to what is freely available so that we can all discuss it, so people can read ahead if they want to. This one got switched over the day, and I don't know what happens there. But you can see the basic thesis is YouTube is to blame. That's what's going to get you the coverage. So again, Christopher Bouzy is a smart guy on this stuff. But the actual report isn't so much about talking about the mechanisms here, which I would have at least a little bit more respect for. Instead, it's just going to highlight people doing quote unquote bad things as determined, not by YouTube necessarily, not by the US government, not by God, but by Christopher Bouzy. And that's where we get into problems. Like, who's the arbiter of this stuff? And is it Bot Sentinel? I would argue no. Yeah, Ian.
And I also love the, we get these journalists who are moralizing about, oh, these YouTubers are making money. It's like, okay, did you write that article as a charitable piece?
It was free.
Was this something that you, oh, wait, I'm betting that you also get paid on this.
Yep.
So, and not only that, but I'm betting you also want views. So when they say, oh, these YouTubers are just, chasing the views, it's like, what do you think journalism has been doing for the past, I don't know how long?
Well, you want to get your content out there. I mean, you absolutely do.
Yeah.
And I think we just saw, there's no reason for me to cover it here, but Ms. Lorenz was tweeting out that the Washington Post is hiring a social media coach for their reporters in order to help them get their unique brands and voices out to more people, including under the Washington Post masthead. I was like, I don't think that's wrong necessarily. I mean, that's the business model. Get your voice out, get famous, get to be someone that people want to hear from. But that's the same thing. Social media coach is the same as how do I make YouTube happy today? What can I change in the editing? Do I need a second channel? All the stuff that we do here on that side of things is reflective of what journalists do. They just don't like to think of it that way. I believe it's because we don't technically have bosses, but you all are the bosses. Believe me, we can't do any of it without you. Britt Cormier, what triggers the paywall? Maybe the popularity, enough clicks while it's free, and then put it behind the wall if it generates enough interest. And does NBC support harassment by paying Cat? Whoo! That is a spicy meatball, Britt. Kat is a very animated and passionate individual on Twitter who very much does not like me, but I want to give full credit where it's deserved. Has not blocked me. We've had a number of interactions. Neither Taylor nor Kat have blocked me. That is very different from the video game industry, where if you say perhaps that wasn't a complete argument and there are other aspects to consider, you're blocked by half of gaming journalism. It is a wild world out there. Jenny's getting inky with it. Thank again for the super chat, though. Doesn't the New York Times and Washington Post take a cut of the revenue from their articles? People in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. Take a cut? They're evil capitalists, Jenny. They just pay salaries to their reporters. There's no equitable distribution of clicks. Now they might do bonuses But no, as a matter of fact, a lot of journalists look down on the pure kind of eat what you kill. You get paid just on what the clicks in your articles were, that are a little bit more common with places like, I think Forbes runs on that model, where you have those paid contributors that are really focused on getting, well, let's be honest, a lot of quantity out there first and foremost. But yeah, all right. Shireen says lawyers talking law would normally cost you loads, but we have a whole law tube full of lawyers. Yes, but not giving you personal legal advice. It's very clear. When the bar calls you, that's very clear for you to say. All right. Let's get
my law society basically said, when I asked them about that, because that was a question I had when I had video, is like,
sure.
Am I opening myself up to huge liability? They're like, literally nobody could reasonably expect that they're taking personal legal advice off of video, so you're good.
Good. I'm glad to hear it, because it's hilarious trying to describe this job to either bar associations or insurance providers.
Oh,
okay. So when contacted for comment, a YouTube spokesperson who has not seen the report said that the site takes these sorts of violations seriously. We're committed to rigorously enforcing these policies equally for all creators and encourage any user to flag content they believe violates our community guidelines. Speaking of bots, that might have been a robot they talked to, because that is the exact sentence that I would expect YouTube to say, regardless of why you called them.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing is, if you're a content creator, you will have had the experience of having YouTube flag your videos over nothing.
Yes.
I had videos where they're like, yeah, no, this has content that just, we don't like.
No.
I haven't gotten a strike for anything, but they'll demonetize something and they'll go like, oh, this is, this can't be shown here. I'm like, but it's literally like from the news.
Yep. It's unsuitable for advertisers. I don't know when advertisers decided not to cover, news broadcasts with ads, but apparently they have an issue on YouTube. It's because they can't trust so many of their people. And you try to tell YouTube, it's like, look, I'm at 600 videos in a row with no problem. You think maybe we could have just a modicum of I'm not gonna burn you, YouTube. But no. So then we get Rolling Stone kind of parroting what we will see in the report. So this is clear, Christopher Bouzy told them some stuff, and then we're just going to say it back to our readers. Under YouTube's current community guidelines, the site prohibits malicious insults focused on famous or identifiable individuals. Okay, oh God. All right. I'm going to have to pull up the YouTube policy here in a second. Or based on people's appearances or status. Status? So you mean protected attributes. We'll get there, Rolling Stone. Like race or being a survivor of domestic abuse. So that's okay. Hold on. But according to the report, channels that focus their content on reactions and opinions of Markle and Hoeg are often allowed to post defamatory content entirely unchecked. Defamatory. Okay, hold on. Rolling Stone. These might be horrible. These might be bad things to say. They might be terrible people. That doesn't necessarily make them defamatory, where you have an untruth that is otherwise a harm to reputation and is a known lie for famous folks. Others employ deceptive practices, like including thumbnails that don't correlate to a video's content in order to get past moderators.
Just pro tip, the moderators don't look at your thumbnail beyond if your thumbnail is itself a content violation. Like if your thumbnail is a dick pic, they will moderate that.
And that's a first appearance of that term here in Hangouts and Headlines. Appreciate it, Ian. I'm not actually even sure that it is. I know yes, in any event.
My apologies, but you can't put up like, a swastika or anything like that as your profile picture. Unless it's like covering World War II and this is an actual historical photograph or something like that. But, beyond that, they don't even they don't look at that. They just watch the video.
Yeah, and deception here is something different, right? To me, deception is, and we'll see what they do with this in the report, because this is where it gets a little silly. But deception is, I'm gonna do a video to you on Star Wars, and I'm gonna put Star Wars stuff up on the thumbnail, and then the video is actually about I don't even know French politics
appreciation.
Whatever. Like it's fundamentally different. If you're putting up a landscape, which is what's going to be an argument here, and it's clear that can't possibly be, this picture of a sunset can't possibly be the content, and the title tells you the content, give or take, in clickbaity terms, I'm not sure that I actually view deception there. Nobody thinks that you're just going to watch a sunset. It's not called sunset video. So yeah, in any event, we'll get there.
When I started out, most of my thumbnails were basically like, here is a stock image with some text on it. And the stock image might connect to things, but sometimes it connected to things in ways I just thought were funny. Or, like, so...
That's right. That's the same I do. Royalty-free images, and then it's like it might even be a visual pun for for what the subject is.
Oh, absolutely. I definitely had some visual puns and whatever else, and like a lot of people are just having thumbnails because that's your skill level, right? And
my skill is not advanced, Ian.
Mine also. I mean, now I just pull up a template off Canva and off you go. But like, what do they expect here?
Yeah, right. Well, they think that that's deceptive. I will submit that YouTube is likely to disagree. And speaking of feisty Ian, speaking of sleepy Ian, we got feisty Papa Hoeg today. It's a whole panoply of commentary. This nonsense needs to end, says Dad. But please don't reward those who attack free speech and yet hide behind it because they are journalists. The First Amendment is for all of us. Indeed it is, Father. Indeed it is. That's actually one place where people get a little mistaken sometimes. Freedom of the press is not the notion that there is something called the press. It is the notion that as well as a freedom of speech, you have a freedom to put that in print in some fashion, whether that's video, it's otherwise in a recording, it's solid in the environment. That's what freedom of the press is, to go with freedom of speech. It is not that we need to have one of those Bugs Bunny little things that says press in the hat band there. And that's important. So I appreciate the super chat, Dad. You don't need to super chat. I will see you.
You're like, I will see you at dinner. Come on.
It's very funny. I love you, Dad. At least 29 YouTube channels were allowed to monetize content that contained harmful, defamatory, and threatening language towards Markle, according to the report. So that's where we get that allegedly there.
Yeah.
An additional 22 channels, so actually, up at about 50, posted at least 30,000 videos that made up 80% of all negative anti-Meghan titles on YouTube, like booed at Buckingham, Meg, I don't want to accidentally swear in British here, Puce?
Puce is a color.
Okay. Puce with rage as mourners screamed loudest, booed Meg back as Queen's dead. So first of all, you gotta respect the SEO here, right? That doesn't say anything. That's not a
whole lot of words.
That you're like, all right, we need Buckingham, we need Meg, we'd like some mourners. Let's get some booze in there.
It's a lot of words, and they're not cooperating with each other at all.
They're not. She is unwelcome. Meghan can't hide despair over absence in Scotland after Queen death report. Okay, at least just based on the titles, right? You don't have to agree with this sentiment, but like, all right. I mean, that sounds like a Sun headline, at least is what I've read here in Hangouts and Headlines. So again, we seem to be walking across the line and back and forth across the line of like, oh, that's a horrible sentiment. We should be nicer to Meghan Markle. Sure, fine. I have no problem with you having that position. And you saying that you disagree and saying something like this is bannable. The single-purpose hate channels focus solely on anti-Markle sentiments. Anti-Markle is not automatically hate. Mentioned negative and defamatory remarks towards Markle in 94%, or if you're Rolling Stone, percent of all their content. According to the report, 3 top producing channels mentioned Markle's name at least 15,000 times in videos that have received a combined 76 million views.
The thing is like good. Defamatory? Really? They reviewed each of these videos with a lawyer to determine that it was defamatory? Because
we need an according to the report here. Rolling Stone forgot one, but it's at least surrounded by them. So yeah. I'm sure Rolling Stone didn't read these. In comparison, Bouzy says Catherine, the Princess of Wales, is mentioned less than 3,000 times in videos discussing the royal family, and most references are overwhelmingly positive. Look,
this sounds like the complaint is that some people are more popular than other people.
It is, right? Like, that's the issue. It's like, okay, so you've labeled it misogyny, you've labeled it racism, you've done these things. It is possible that someone could, like, is it Princess? British folks help me out. Princess Kate more than, is it Princess Meghan? And that's being reflective. I mean, like, one of the issues that folks have in the 10 barge Lorenz thesis is that YouTube might be helping out that engagement, but it's feeding what people want to see. This is this constant kind of catch-22 of, yeah, a lot of people don't like Meghan Markle. Is that allowed? And where does that line live? Where are you not allowed to like? Where are you not allowed to not like Meghan Markle in a specific way?
Let's do Prince Andrew next.
Sure.
I wonder if he's got a lot of positive coverage on YouTube, or if there's maybe more commentary that is negative, and I wonder why that could be.
Right, and Prince Andrew, of course, is one of those things that is was in our earlier videos this week, talking about police actions in the UK. So it's it's kind of skipping. It's what we might call stealing a rhetorical base of, if you have this content, it must be defamatory, it must be hateful, it could just be negative, and you don't have to like that. You can say, hey, YouTube's too negative of a space, or they're treating Meghan Markle unfairly, or all of these kinds of things. But what you've posited in your report is that something must be done. And I don't know that you've made your case yet. In fact, I know that you haven't. And so we're going to continue with this interview, but we have to be very careful, because we want people to be able to express unpopular opinions and to discuss their merits or lack thereof in an open environment. Reasonable minds can differ, folks. Stickers available in the store soon. Put them everywhere.
I got to get some roll of law magnets made too.
Oh, we'll do it. We will do it. The story is going up very, very, very shortly. I know I've said that for about 2 months. As it turns out, the state of Michigan just really didn't want their tax money, and it took them a little while to get us a sales tax license. Nicholas Starro says, watched Ian's video. Please do. This is a great segue, actually. Ian got a video up before me while I was sleeping, because Ian doesn't sleep. He might be a robot like Rob. And check out his video. It's at Runkle of the Bailey, right? It's at your main channel?
Yes.
Okay. Check out Ian's video after this one. You're going to get some great stuff. It's the one with the picture of the clown. If I use that, yeah.
I have 2 with pictures of clowns, but this is the most recent one with a picture of
recent one with a picture of a clown. It's one of Ian's go-to moves, putting a picture of a clown up. If I use that method of quotation in my negotiations, we'll see. We'll get there. We'll get there, Nicholas. I not only would lose face, I'd lose work. Oh, you'd get probably a bar discussion if we tried to quote like this report quotes.
There were people in the comments, and I don't know, who these people are, but they were going like, oh, what happens if you tried this in court? And I'm going, if I tried this in court because the other side quoted like this, I would just have to mention that this happened and then sit down and enjoy the show, because the judge would take over and the judge would rip people a new one.
Mm-hmm. Judges do that.
This is not something you could get away with, in a so yeah, we'll get to that.
We will. We're not even through the article yet, folks, but I'm having a lot of fun. And thank you, Ian, for coming this morning.
I wouldn't have missed it for the world. This one, I was like, I gotta be there.
Cashing in.
2 months I've been on one of these. Cashing
in on the public's morbid fascination with the Johnny Depp trial. Okay, the public is also to blame for being interested in this case.
Yes.
One creator made over 128 videos making hurtful comments about Heard's body and defamatory claims about her testimony. You have to enjoy this Ouroboros here. You're in a defamation case where at the end of the day, you still have articles going out essentially just ignoring the jury's verdict. And then you say there are defamatory claims about the claims made that were actually held basically to be defamatory in themselves. Unpack that, folks. Within the videos, Heard's name was mentioned over 6,000 times, according to the report. Another YouTuber, and here we start to get into things. As I understand it, this another YouTuber, we're going to look at this as private now. It's actually not going to go through the archive, I don't think. Okay, so this is Trevor Colt. You'll see this referenced a lot. 80,000 subscribers. Again, It is marginally influencer, whatever you want to describe these people as. But they are going to actually use in the Rolling Stone. They're going to target specific channels, which is kind of odd to link to these directly. They don't link directly in these videos. Continually posts policy violating threats against Markle and has yet to be removed from the site. In one live video, the YouTuber expressed his belief that Markle deserves to be strangled to death. And we'll see a kind of image in the report on this, and said as recently as Monday that Markle and her husband, Prince Harry, should both be shot at dawn. Now, this is not the kind of rhetoric I like to use. In fact, you'll never hear me use anything remotely like this. It also isn't, at least as described in Rolling Stone, what we would consider a true threat. This is what is that kind of heightened, that person should be shot kind of talk. And I don't love that. You've been here in Virtual Legality for a while now, most of you, I would guess, and 900 of you. And I would say that I don't think it's the best way to communicate your ideas. I don't think it's the best way to actually have these conversations. Heck, a number of fellow lawyers on YouTube get to places, and you've heard me say this here in Virtual Legality, that I'm uncomfortable with. It's not what I like in terms of rhetoric. And if I were in that room, I would probably, try to get the temperature in the room toned down a little bit. But we have to be very careful about whether or not that is kind of the thing that is either actionable or that we want action on. And I think it depends on volume. It depends on frequency. It depends on context. And context is one of the things that we know and we will see this report is playing fast and loose with at least one prominent example that Ian went into in great length while I was sleeping, as best I can tell. So we'll get to it.
Mean, it wasn't anything, I wasn't trying to like scoop you or anything. I was just going,
No.
I gotta make a video on this.
No, it was awesome to see. I wake up, I got my video ready, I get my research going. We got, I think we got Rob in here as well. Gotta love Rolling Stone preaching for the purge of defamatory content. Please, Rolling Stone, define defamation, because by now you should know the definition. Virginia case. Oops, that stung, didn't it? See, I wasn't even going to use the name of the university, Rob. Yeah. Rolling Stone has had a somewhat tumultuous relationship with truth, veracity, and investigative reporting. That is no doubt the case. Good morning, Rob, by the way. And I just skipped to him because I saw him. I did catch the other super chats. We will get to them in just a second, I promise. I want to get through this article or else we're never, ever getting done. And I do have a 10 o'clock. It's an outside window. I don't think we'll hit it, but who knows? Let's see. Where do we leave off here? Bouzy tells Rolling Stone that he personally reported the videos multiple times to both YouTube and an individual at Google. What is this? What is this? I called my friend who works at Google. That's interesting. But the videos have remained up.
Which individual are we talking about? Is this like some random, is he in custodial or like?
It's just funny that, you want to talk about connections. I don't have an individual at Google to contact. I don't have a buddy that I can go around the horn. It says he used the normal method to report them himself and nothing happened, which is suggestive of a certain disagreement between the platform and himself on this. And then he also tried to go the personal route, which we have seen have some success in certain important areas. So we did a video on, New York University getting struck for copyright infringement while doing a class on copyright infringement and explaining how it works. And they were able to go through their friends at Google to get out of the kind of Byzantine black box set of robot emails that you get about, we know this is disappointing, but you're a bad person. Less than an hour after a request for comment on multiple specific videos, YouTube pulled at least 2 videos down for violating the site's policy on harassment and bullying. So at least, I guess to his credit, the notion here is that Rolling Stone gets these video addresses, says, YouTube, why are these things still up? We don't actually know what the level of list was that was sent over. I'm guessing it was more than 2. And then YouTube responded by pulling down 2 videos. Upon review, we removed 2 videos shared by Rolling Stone for violating our harassment and cyberbullying policies, which prohibit targeting an individual with threats or prolonged and malicious insults based on protected attributes, the YouTube spokesperson said, adding that they were still reviewing 2 additional videos. So I guess the total list was 4. So 50-50. It's all right in baseball. Flagged by Rolling Stone and said they will take appropriate action if the content violates community guidelines. Either close questions or like, nah. But we're not going to say no right here. The report also detailed what it called egregious cases of copyright infringement and plagiarism from anti-Markle and royal family-focused YouTube channels. More on this in just a second. According to the report, at least 22 channels published thousands of videos made by converting news articles to audio with text-to-speech tools. The majority of the 34,000 videos did not credit the articles or news organizations they were taken from. The videos received over 441 million views. Why should this matter to the average person? According to Bouzy, Rolling Stone's not even willing to stand behind this, a lack of follow-through with YouTube content moderation only puts the average person in more danger. Oh, that's an interesting kind of claim. In addition to these videos pushing a narrative of racism and misogyny that could twist a viewer's worldview, did we see anything that was specifically, well, did we see anything, at least in this article, that was listed as racist specifically? I would suppose that's just a if you're against Meghan Markle kind of concept, at least as presented.
And I think that in the actual report they make some allegations along those lines. So.
We'll get there then. Then. Could twist a viewer's worldview. Hey, look, I'm going to say this to you. Parents, I don't recommend raising your kids on YouTube. Adults, I don't recommend taking all your information from YouTube. Even if it's just me. Even if you're just saying, I only do hangouts and headlines. Get out there. Other people are going to disagree with me. And get as much information as possible. This is about more and better information for you to make the decisions yourself. Because yes, broadly, taking your information from any one source, and that can be YouTube, that can be the New York Times, is a way that you could have your worldview twisted because you're putting all of the secondary analysis into another person's hands. And in my opinion, that's no way to live life. So you're not going to hear that from me. Don't just only watch Hangouts and Headlines. Don't just only hang out with Rick Hoeg. Don't just only hang out at Runkle of the Bailey. Sorry, Ian. But go get other views. Bouzy believes unchecked policy means a higher likelihood of targeted harassment towards all people, like journalists or private individuals. In releasing,
you know what?
Yeah,
the average person, like the average private citizen, does not need to worry about being harassed on YouTube because nobody cares that. Like, until I started being known, nobody harassed me because nobody knew who I was. Like,
the only exception I will say to that, Ian, is that I do find not problematic exactly, but a breach of decorum. The folks that will take like an airport lounge phone video and like take it of people in public, but that are not otherwise public figures, and like make a video about how stupid they are or their argument or their fat butt or whatever. And it's like, yeah, I suppose I can give credence to if we all just become hate-mongering evil folks because of the YouTube algorithm, that'll happen more and more often. It seems untenable and unlikely to me, but there is at least a crack. There's at least a small bit of light in the cave wall that I can see that argument.
I guess. Yeah.
In releasing the report, Bouzy tells Rolling Stone he's not trying to target free speech. Pro tip, whenever you have to put a sentence in that explains how you're not targeting free speech, reflect on what you're doing and what you're reporting on, because chances are that means it's a reasonable person could look at it as an attack on free speech. And it is. He just wants YouTube to enforce its own policies, which may or may not be congruent with notions of free speech, by the way. I think a platform as big as YouTube with the billions of views, they have a responsibility now. The law might disagree.
Yeah.
This is not 1999. This is not the early days of the internet. It is modern year. A lot of folks consume their news on these platforms. And whether it's YouTube, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Facebook, they have a responsibility now to protect their users from some of this toxic stuff that's been put out there. And if they're not willing to do that, we need legislation to push them in that direction. We're just one notch south of Anakin Skywalker talking to Padme and say, well, if they don't agree, they should be made to.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. But here's the problem. Whether it's legislatures, whether it's Chris Bouzy, whether it's YouTube, define toxic stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Good luck. Because YouTube might be painting with too narrow of a brush. I'm willing to grant that. But the alternative sounds, as you describe it, worse. Some outside party deciding what I should be allowed to listen to, because otherwise it will radicalize me. Otherwise it will twist my worldview. And then it becomes who watches the watchers, right? Because who's deciding on what worldview is acceptable?
I know who he thinks should be deciding. Yes, yeah. That's exactly who he thinks should be deciding.
Right. Well, I don't think we're comfortable with the Department of Christopher Bouzy deciding on what information we're allowed to take in. So
it would be the Ministry of Christopher Bouzy.
Oh, sure. Okay. Apologies. Yes. And then you get some links out to Bot Sentinel. If you aren't familiar with this, they do name and shame Twitter users and others. They might be branching into YouTube users so that you can just add them to an automated block list and just never think of who Christopher Bouzy doesn't want you to think of, which, I mean, okay, if you're okay giving up, again, that judgment to a person that has created a company that has a robot as a logo and is otherwise giving interviews like this, then that's up to you. But I would argue that I personally wouldn't want to give that authority up to anybody or to otherwise yield that. We also have Bot Sentinel on Twitter, again with the robot, again with almost 200,000 followers, including Phil Spencer of Xbox. It's interesting. And we have him fighting with somebody. I mean, I don't know who this guy must be, a real a-hole. Read the entire transcript, Ian. Yeah, I mean, who trusts Ian's? Each sentence was quoted. That is not a misquote. Oh, there's some drama here, folks. We're gonna have to get to this. In the zip file included with the report, we included the timestamps for each sentence. You are acting as if he was taken out of context. He clearly wasn't. Try harder. Ooh, we got the old try harder. Woo.
Ooh, yeah.
This is internet big boy talk.
Yeah.
Ian, this isn't you, is it, Ian?
It might be.
Oh my goodness. He's responding to our own Ian Runkle of Runkle of the Bailey. Check him out, like, subscribe, if only to send a message that you support independent content creators thinking independently. But let's go and look at this a little bit further because we've got a report to read. YouTube policy violations. Report, September 13th, 2022. Table of contents. We've got the way he did this exactly with Twitter, so we know what we're getting, except we have pages for specific YouTubers. Two of them. Things get weird, right? Because again, you're making a scientific type claim, and that is that YouTube is compromised as a platform. Yeah. That requires a certain amount of what we might describe as rigor. All right, we have to establish that this is what a good functioning YouTube would look like. This is the number of bad actors. This is whether it's a drop in the pond, a drop in the ocean, or a drop in that water bottle, like you said, Ian. And if you think any of that homework is going to be done, you are wrong. This is finding essentially two people that this author thinks are bad, and we're not going to discount that. All right, he is welcome to think they're bad. You are welcome to agree with him on their badness, but that does not an overall hate speech, misogyny, racism, homophobia, transphobia, xenophobia, targeted harassment, and widespread copyright infringement going unchecked hypothesis yield. It just means that there are potentially some bad apples, and you might even disagree with whether those apples or not are bad, and whether you think YouTube should be the inspector proper, going and checking on the apples and throwing out what apples you are not permitted to even check for yourself. That's what we're really talking about. We got key findings here. Flagrant platform policy violations went unchecked. Woo! Flagrant. Spicy. A YouTuber who repeatedly threatened violence, including suggesting Meghan Markle, Duchess of Sussex, should be strangled to death, wasn't removed from the platform. So we're, again, threatened violence is a specific kind of concept we're going to have to look at. A popular channel helped foster misogynistic and dehumanizing opinions towards women. All women? A woman? We'll get there. And YouTube's algorithms helped promote the channel. Multiple channels with millions of views were dedicated to publishing malicious and defamatory content about Meghan Markle, Duchess of Sussex. Is it? So I don't know this. You know, in trademark law, you really hate it when like the movie studios and whatnot put the really big names with the subtitles and mandate that you say it in the press releases and your articles. You have to do the whole thing. Is it a requirement, British friends, to should I be saying Duchess of Sussex every time I say Meghan Markle? Is it entirely necessary to say the full thing? Because it seems interesting. An average of 94.7% of the videos available were about the Duchess. About the Duchess? I mean, okay. It's a popular topic. A network of 22 channels was monetizing content taken from numerous news outlets. Over 34,000 videos contained articles taken from news outlets and read verbatim without crediting the source. Sounds bad. Also sounds like the kind of thing you can see on YouTube. The 22 channels received a combined 441 million views. Okay, this is their key findings page. This is, when you write a report, this is as far as you think the reporters are going to get. Okay, you put it in bullet points so that this can be used. This is what you're targeting, and this is a raw assertion to start out with. Usually you put this like last after you establish what the hell you're talking about. And then it's a YouTuber, a channel, something about folks talking about Meghan Markle. You claim they're malicious and defamatory, and then you put a number here, and then copyright infringement. Those are your key findings. That's what we're reacting to. Just close up shop. It's all a waste of time, Ian. But let's instead read. You can download this, as I have, so that I can present it to you in picture form. In February 2022, Bot Sentinel published a report that included findings about YouTube channels targeting Meghan Markle, Duchess of Sussex. I think it's mandatory. It must be law somewhere. We expanded our investigation to determine whether policy violations were prevalent on the platform. This is like one of those like Scientific American articles where it's like, people found we found that people need and desire water when thirsty. It's like, yes, okay, there are policy violations across every social media platform. We reviewed 29 YouTube channels and analyzed over 35,000 transcripts. Oh, that's a lot. You're putting the work in. You're doing the shoe leather, right? Using machine learning and artificial intelligence. Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh no. You asked the bots. I thought you were a sentinel of the bots, Chris.
No, he started that, but then he changed it to say that now it is a bot that is a sentinel.
Right. Bot sentinel. Where does the preposition go? Right.
The bots were good all along.
It's just so funny, right? It's like, okay, machine learning on the transcripts. Really? I mean, that kind of thing could result in stupid things like, oh, I don't know, a reference to Johnny Depp coming across as dip. Things that would be really
nobody
weird.
Would ever do that. That would be weird, right?
No, nobody would do that. That would be odd. That would be odd. We also manually reviewed nearly 24 channels suspected of copyright infringement. Okay, again, all right, we're getting important information here. We gave the bots the transcripts to 29 YouTube channels. We manually reviewed for copyright infringement. Honestly, copyright infringement is the one that's easier for the bots to handle. It's just the same words. Like what you're going to accuse them of is reading news articles. That's the kind of thing that machine learning, I think, could really work on. Trying to figure out what's toxic is perhaps not the bot's best, highest use case, right? I think we've all seen the articles from whenever Microsoft or Amazon or Google or whoever tries to put a bot out into the world, and it's like time to becoming a virulent racist robot is like very, very short, because these robots take the input into account and figure out what people are responding to.
We asked Skynet to determine what's best for people.
That's right. Skynet, not terribly enthused about any of our communications. Each of the 29 YouTube channels we reviewed contained multiple policy violations. And I suspect this is true. I do, however, want to warn people, like if you go and you read through like one of these, right? If we look at the harassment and cyberbullying policies, and we see this is going to come up, they're going to accuse YouTube of not enforcing it well enough. We will see that these are written very broadly, very ambiguously. And we've talked about that in this space. That is normal for a corporation to do because violation of a law, violation of a guideline, violation of a rule is where their power lives. They are only supposed to be able to act if you breach one of these lines. So they make the lines in the eye of the beholder, especially in their particular eye. They are beholding that eye. And so when these things are violated, it's a little bit like that you violate 3 laws a day kind of concept. I am positive that a person motivated to do something about this channel, hi Chris, could potentially look at this conversation and try to frame it as attacking someone, right? I've said Chris's name a number of times, and I've tried to say it respectfully, and I'm disagreeing with the actual subject matter of his content, not him as a person. Ad hominems aren't welcome here against anybody in virtual legality, but you could say, oh, well, this is going after him in some way, or otherwise looking at some of this language here and trying to figure out what YouTube means when it talks about maliciousness, right? Don't post content on YouTube if it fits any of the descriptions noted below. So here are the specific harassment rules. Content that features prolonged, just as lawyers here, we're going to keep count of the things that are ambiguous. Prolonged, Name calling or malicious insults, such as racial slurs. So that's trying to put context around that concept based on someone's intrinsic attributes. Now, intrinsic attributes is a little bit of a fight, but it's probably things like at least physical appearance, membership in what they will describe as, I believe, a protected class, like the Civil Rights Act here in the United States. Is your political affiliation intrinsic? I would say no, but I don't know. These attributes include their protected group status, physical attributes, or their status as a survivor of sexual assault, non-consensual intimate imagery distribution, domestic abuse, child abuse, and more. I'm not entirely sure when YouTube allows intimate imagery distribution of any kind, but here we go. We got kind of cross-overlapping guidelines. Content uploaded with the intent to shame, deceive, or insult. Clearly, that's not banned on YouTube. You might be saying, oh, of a minor, right? YouTube's totally fine with shaming, deceiving, and insulting, just not to a minor. So, you know, keep that in mind. So you've got YouTube deciding on things of what's prolonged, what's malicious, what's intrinsic. You've got whether or not someone's a minor, which is at least going to vary by jurisdiction. And then you've got exceptions to those, including exceptions for things like discussions of topical issues involving concerning individuals who have positions of power. I mean, we know that Meghan Markle is the Duchess of Sussex. I can't actually forget it now, having said it 7 times, just reading through what's out there. We know that at least one of these people that were being discussed can get a Washington Post op-ed written with seemingly no difficulty at all. Ian, could you do that? I can't do that. I don't.
No, I mean, I don't know that I can get a a Craigslist post written without without some difficulty.
Right. So, it's certainly topical. What are the royals? What is a monarchy? What does that marriage mean? What is the relationship between those things? That's an exception. It's listed right here. I don't know. It gets confusing. And that's not to say Mr. Bouzy is wrong. That is to say that YouTube has written these as we would expect YouTube to do in a way that allows them to pick when there's a problem. And that's, I think, fundamentally one of the problems that Bot Sentinel has in its thesis, which is YouTube's not enforcing its policies. I would argue that they maybe are. And those policies are just wind. For example, the Trevor Colt MC channel. And this one's tricky for me because it's like, okay, you think you found examples. I want to see receipts. I've talked about that in this space a lot. So that's kind of good. This seems targeted. I mean, when you're only using 2 channels to have this conversation, and it's Trevor Colt and Umbrella Guy, it certainly comes across to me as right up against the line of like, this is harassing them. You are going out in public and saying these things. You are saying he's engaged in threats of violence, racism, transphobia, and other policy violations. And you'll put up screenshots. But if I were in their shoes, you got to be very careful about this kind of stuff. And I think this should be
This is the kind of thing you have a conversation with a lawyer about.
I would hope that they did.
Because there's risk to that. Yeah.
This is called out, specifically the channel by name. We saw it has 80,000 subscribers. That's less than here, right? And so I think you have to be very careful with these things. I also think it makes your report a little bit less credible. That it starts to look like an attack piece rather than something that is focused on the overall problem. It starts to look like you have an issue with specific individuals and that this is a revenge play type thing. And I don't think that's the way you want to be considering any of this. But I'm not him, and it's not like wrong. I just don't think it does a great deal of work for your rhetoric here.
We're glad you're not him.
Despite the many policy violations, which again is their assertion, YouTube didn't terminate the account after multiple reports. That to me actually speaks of a disagreement. And as we have talked about, the platform is the final arbiter of these things. We can discuss whether that's okay or not, but hey, they are. We identified YouTube channels predominantly focused on publishing malicious and defamatory videos, as decided by me, about Meghan Markle, Duchess of Sussex. Mandatory drink. We discovered that an average of 94.7% of the videos contain malicious and defamatory content about the Duchess. You identified channels that you determined were malicious and defamatory, and then determined that they were malicious and defamatory. We might have a little bit of, again, an Ouroboros here. And YouTube monetized each channel. One channel in particular mentioned Meghan Markle, a shocking 6,225 times. YouTube awarded that channel with the Silver Creator Award for reaching 100,000 subscribers. It's kind of automatic.
What did you do to anybody who gets 100,000 subscribers? Like,
YouTube took special note of this person. I should have brought out my silver play button. Just put it there. It's like, hey, look, YouTube has had issues with me. They suppress every time I use the word YouTube. We uncovered a network of 22 YouTube channels using text-to-speech translation and voice actors to read news articles verbatim without attribution to the news outlets. How do you know it's text-to-speech and voice actors? Different videos? Okay.
I guess they might different videos.
I was like, I guess you could translate it and then voice act translations. Anyway, the 22 channels received a combined 441 million views. YouTube policy violations were commonplace, and YouTube allowed channels like Trevor Colt MC to operate unchecked for over 11 years. In some cases, the policy violations were so flagrant, it seems implausible to assume YouTube wasn't aware of some of the violations. This report will illustrate how egregious YouTube policy violations go unpunished and how YouTube rewards YouTubers who repeatedly violate its policies. It will show how numerous YouTube channels plagiarize articles from news outlets and monetize that content. It won't show those things. Yeah. It will name them.
It'll accuse, but it won't actually show us anything.
Yeah, we won't. It can't show us how YouTube is doing this or what it responds to. It just has screenshots. So this is Trevor, and again, this starts to sound like a high school newsletter that's being passed around to talk about that weird guy in the corner, and not a report that is being otherwise exclusively interviewed for by Rolling Stone. Trevor's YouTube channel is one of the most toxic channels we have reviewed when compiling this report. Trevor's channel is brimming with threats of violence, racism, transphobia, misogyny, and xenophobia. In one video, Trevor stated, "Germans aren't good people." YouTube, I'm quoting for newsworthiness. Don't give a blank what anyone says. Trevor's videos have received nearly 18 million views, and YouTube allows Trevor to monetize his channel. Your example, your go-to here isn't... So again, we go back to the definitions, right? What are we concerned about if we're YouTube? We are really concerned about malicious insults such as racial slurs. I'm not saying, hey, we have a German Hoeg fan club here. We have a lot of folks in Germany. I wouldn't say this thing, but your go-to example is Germans aren't good people. That's not a malicious insult. I mean, like, it's an insult. It doesn't use a slur. It doesn't go past that. And we're going to have all these quotes here, and there's going to be some stuff that is, you're not going to like. I don't like. But again, we're looking for extreme, prolonged, malicious, intrinsic attributes. So examples of reasons this guy should get banned or otherwise punished by YouTube. I don't like diversity, and I don't believe in equality. Okay, I would talk to you about those things and why I disagree. That's a stance. Okay.
It's an opinion.
I'm getting annoyed at BLM. Okay. But again, so these are your examples. Your go-tos are non-malicious insults and I would say unpopular opinions. And you're going to go to the Rolling Stone and you're going to say, I am not trying to curb free speech. At the start here, just looking at this, you've targeted one individual channel with things we don't have to agree with, but that are not otherwise the things that look to violate YouTube's policies on the top. And again, you always want to go with your strongest foot first. I don't see it yet. Then we get weird blanks. Blank stab them to death, and I don't give a blank who shares this video. I suppose that's just a extra expletive, probably. And then we've got one on women's rights. And again, it's all kind of the same. Things that might seem extreme, things that you don't like, things that you disagree with, potentially, or agree with, but things that might bother you and not rising to that level in particular. Trevor doesn't restrict his toxic rhetoric to his YouTube channel. He is a frequent guest on multiple channels where he contributes to violate YouTube policies. In a video titled Live Real Talk with Ems and Trev, 7 p.m. UK time, giving us the heading, so we can just go direct ourselves there, I suppose. Trevor mocks Meghan Markle's children and claims one has I am going to assume, expletive eye defect. Again, if you are making a claim like this, the blanks, while good decorum, you probably don't want to use. It's a little bit harder to see exactly what they're saying there. We're going to assume that these are expletives.
you at least want to put like the first letter so people
Yeah,
know.
give me the F star. Yeah. That's why he's not on any of the photographs. And then yes, right. So this is shaming a minor, probably, although we won't necessarily see this report like actually go and use that provision in the harassment. Here's your strangled to death. That's not really a sentence, so it's unclear exactly if that sounds like that. You can't have transgender rights. Okay, so that's again not an insult, but it is a stance that you definitely don't have to agree with. Transgenders freaks. Sidekick is a expletive transgender. So this is bad talk. You don't have to agree with it. You can see people getting upset at this. Does this rise to the level of harassment? This isn't targeted at a specific individual. It's targeted at a group. And I'm not going to sit here and go to bat and die on the hill for this dude. All right.
Oh,
but these are the no, exactly. This is, but when we're talking about YouTube must do something, YouTube as a platform is broken, that kind of thing. You pick out one guy. Honestly, back to the comments we talked about before, I feel like I could do better than this. I feel like if this is the point I wanted to make, I can find crazier people saying crazier things. So this particular person being used is just kind of odd. I would want to dig into that. And again, we have to decide whether, we're an adult community, whether YouTube is allowed to have stuff like that, where you can dispose of it, where you can react, where you can say, here's why this guy's a moron, here's why this is wrong, here's why this guy's an idiot, or whether you shouldn't ever be permitted to even see anything like that. And the risk, of course, with that approach is that you never get to see anything that YouTube or the hall monitors or Chris Bouzy's of the world don't want you to see. And then where is the non-crazy guy, right? Because you never saw them because they decided that it was uncouth and that they didn't want you to see that particular take or information. So freedom of expression, folks, it's important. And we got to be very, very careful with it. Which brings us to Tug, that umbrella guy. Misogynistic and anti-feminist content was readily available on the platform. Raw assertion. We're only using 2 examples here. One such channel, that umbrella guy, helped foster misogynistic and dehumanizing opinions towards women. Women on the whole? I don't know. Again, I don't follow his content. His latest victim is Amber Heard, and he published 128 videos about the actress. Probably about the trial, right? I mean, I don't.
Yeah, he's implying that there's like more than one, but I'm not aware of what else he's covered. I don't.
He was a video game guy, right? I mean, umbrella guy and the Resident Evil logo suggests he's a video game guy. Am I wrong on this?
I don't know. Like, a lot of people are like, "Oh, you're a Tug fan." I'm like, I don't even.
I've never been to his channel ever.
I'm like, yes, I'm sorry. I just haven't. So, I mean, I don't have a whole lot of time to watch YouTube videos anymore.
That's the funny thing, isn't it? People are always like, "Did you see this? Did you see this?" I'm like, "No. What did Ian say?"
It's like it's all these creators I used to follow, and now I just don't have time because I'm making my own videos, and it takes. So, I barely get to play a lot of the video games I like because I'm just like, well, better do some, better.
Well, like me, you're a practicing lawyer, you're a content creator. You got to have some family time in there at some point. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, it's basically like, hey, I've got 2 full-time jobs, and then also, I was gonna say I got to sleep, but we see how that's going.
You don't have to sleep. When we analyzed the transcripts, remember the robots did this. We discovered that umbrella guy mentioned Amber Heard over 6,100 times in 128 videos. What is that? Is that like 60 ago? And here are the quotes. YouTube, again, quoted for newsworthiness, just for future personal moderation. Just hi. She's got those psycho eyes. She looks crazy. She looks crazy, man dip. If that sounded weird, it is. Hang on.
Yeah.
She's a nut. She's disgusting. Quote balloon. Quote at the front, quote at the end. Like a Telltale game, you'll want to remember that.
Oh, yeah. I got thoughts on this.
Amber, your lips are gross. I don't know, to be honest, what it looks like. I mean, if we're, gross, I don't want to see her gross hair. It's kind of close to some of the examples they give. YouTube kind of highlights some of these types of things. Again, we're looking for maliciousness. So they've got, look at this creature's teeth. They're so disgusting. Question is it calling them a creature that makes it malicious? YouTube, very unclear on any of this stuff, right?
It doesn't seem to be, because they also go on and talk about, look at, this dog of a woman, and sort of, they seem to put a very high premium on this issue of denying people's fundamental humanity.
Yes.
And, that is something that's often talked about when we look at, like, Canada has hate speech legislation. Okay. And, if I go and I say, hey, this specific person is ugly, not a problem.
Okay.
But if I go and start, referencing things and connecting it to like racial stereotypes, then we get into a problem. And if you start talking about a particular, religious group, say, and you say they, I don't like these people, not a problem in terms of hate speech. But if you start saying these people are insects or vermin and they need to be, like, that's where the law starts to go, maybe, because that's the point where the natural sort of next step after calling people vermin is, well, what do we do with vermin?
Right. Once you deny their humanity, that's the slope. No, and I can see that. And this is the entire problem with the way YouTube does this, is that they kind of put this broad language that I said, we're not YouTube. They have a number of different definitions they could use, and then they try to hit it with examples. And then the question is like, okay, if you say that it is this creature's teeth, if we say look at this woman's teeth, they're so disgusting, is that allowed now? I mean, it would be useful to have this kind of counterpoint in these kinds of things, but you can see they use creature, they use look at this dog. They say in this particular one about membership in a protected group, they elevate it to parenthetical slur targeting group, and not just perhaps the nationality as said as a nationality. And so YouTube does seem to be more concerned with that dehumanization approach than anything else. And so, this is talking about it as a person and says, I have an issue with them. Burn it to the ground, like I said. Again, true threats. I mean, we have to talk about rhetoric and what's allowed and what's not allowed there.
We'll get to this one.
Okay.
This one's got some interesting aspects.
Good, because Ian has gone through this stuff, and he's going to have a lot of good stuff to say about this specifically. I think that's the herpes. I think that's the what. We'll get herpes for you and your friends. And that's okay. It's unclear. All right, so we're going to come back. We're going to do this right now because this is Umbrella Guy. We've got a lot on this. Ian, do you want to set the stage for like what has happened with this? Because this is what Umbrella Guy goes out with yesterday morning.
Yeah. So Umbrella Guy posts this and basically says, hey, he puts this in as a quote, and it doesn't appear that it's a quote because here's the portion of the video. And I watched the portion of the video and I went, yeah, there's a whole bunch of other text in there. That's weird.
Yeah, it goes through like halfway, give or take, here at the top. And by the way, man dip is a big tell. That's why I highlighted it, because this is essentially she looks crazy, period. And then it's like man Depp, like Johnny Depp, as in like, I can't believe you went out with this lady, man Depp. Yeah. And the robots get it wrong, both the YouTube robots and then the analyzing robots. And then you want to talk about the level of reporting here. He doesn't even look at that and say, man dip, huh?
This is like one of his showpiece quotes, right? Yep. You would think that you'd go and check that. Yeah. Like, cause the thing is that those transcripts, I can edit those. Like I can edit the YouTube transcript, so I could put it in and just put in something in there that is wildly different than my video. And you know what? It might be fun to do that because I bet Bouzy is going through my videos right now. So I could put in something there that's just like wild, and he'd be like, oh, this is in his video. It's like, no, it's not.
You just add another one later on past where he would have stopped that just says, that was for you, Chris.
It's just going to be entirely man dip references in my... And the only reason I'm not going to do that is because I actually have a few followers who are members of the deaf community. and they rely on that stuff. So I'm not going to mess with this, but like, you can see the stuff that those people deal with because they, they get these transcripts that are machine generated. And as it turns out, a bot is not necessarily the greatest at evaluating content. Oh, whoops. But I mean, he clearly didn't even check this. It's not Mandip.
Like, no, it's obvious. Like it's very clear. Like you look at this clip and there's a period here. And then it's this kind of thesis is Umbrella Guy essentially saying, she looks crazy. And I can't believe Depp, like I said, it's very obvious. And if you followed the trial with us on YouTube and you were watching some of the automatic closed captions, you know how these things can be, right? Johnny Depp was Mr. Death like 80% of the time. And misheard was the word misheard, which was ironic given the context of the trial. But like, that's what happens here. So YouTube screwed this one up, and it's because Umbrella Guy has a bit of an accent, and Depp does sound a little bit like Dip when you actually watch this video. But again, it's like just the cursory amount of homework. You're going out in public to this. You're going to be interviewed by the Rolling Stone. You go and you check and confirm this. You're going to put this up for yourself. It's an extra maybe couple hours of work. I mean, it might be more if, I don't know, some kind of weirdness like these particular sentences were like 6 or 8 hours apart. That would make it harder if that were the case. But surely, because it's in the same quote, that wouldn't happen, right? Which brings us to Christopher Bouzy. Ian makes his video, says, that quote ain't right. And says, and Christopher Bouzy responds by saying, it's all in the transcript. It's all there. Ian has some thoughts. Ian, what am I looking at here?
So, basically what I initially said was, hey, Rolling Stone, are you sure like that this is the article you want to run with? I don't think it's a good look. And Bouzy drops into my mentions to say, hey, this is totally actually a direct exact quote. And, I include the transcripts. I posted those up online. You can check. And you know what? I thought it is entirely possible to edit a video. Maybe my lying ears are deceiving me. Let's go look at the transcript. And then I said,
yes, that sounds like a fun time.
I was just like, he says I need to do my homework on this one. And fair ball, because Tug actually did take down the video. So I pull up the transcript and it's not a direct quote. You can see there's intervening text. Now, it's interesting because we get down to the crazy man dip in this section, but we don't get to she's a nut or she's disgusting.
Where do they live? We don't know.
Well, you see how this is at like 2:24:49?
Yes.
Well, when you get to she's disgusting, that's at a little bit over 9 hours. Because this is a full day live stream.
Okay.
So, and it's funny because when you look at this context, right? One of the things Bouzy said to defend himself was, listen, he said all of these things and I didn't change the context. Well, when you look at this context of this particular quote bubble, it sounds
like a rant. It sounds like a rant.
It sounds like a rant, and it sounds like she's disgusting is referring to her, like her features, because he talks about her having these, how she looks. She's got those psycho eyes. She looks crazy. It sounds like he's talking about her physical appearance when he says it's disgusting.
It does.
Well, I actually went and looked at it, and the she's disgusting. He's talking about the claims she's making and how implausible they are.
Yeah.
And saying she's disgusting. So that refers not to her appearance, but to her lying some 6.5 hours later from the start of this quote. So, and he's saying, oh, this is no big deal. And I'm going, but this is a deceptively misleading quote. Like, this is outright. And I mean, I had people, both Bouzy and some of the Bouzy acolytes, who were going, well, if you tried to use this argument about you can't, these are different places, the court would laugh at you. And I'm like, if I tried to include as a quote like in one quotation mark, things that were 6.5 hours apart, the court would tear me apart. Like, just absolutely. That is not something you can do in a courtroom. It's not something you can do in a classroom. You would get a failing mark for pulling this in a classroom. It's not something you can do in a newsroom. This is against journalistic ethics. This is like,
bare minimum. This would be the absolute bare minimum. You'd have to put ellipses between the spots, and that's indicative of within a paragraph. Like,
you can't do that for 6.5 hours of content, right? An ellipsis is supposed to be where you're talking about, if you have a little bit of content that you're skipping over because, maybe somebody interjects something random and you just want to cut that out because it makes the sentence sound weird.
But I'm just saying, at bare minimum, you have to signal that there's a difference in time. I mean, you can put brackets 6 hours later. I mean, like, you get the job done.
Yeah. I mean, you have to tell the viewer, you have to be honest with the reader, and he says, oh, well, I am honest because it's linked there. And it's like, well, actually, you posted the transcripts a day later. So no. And B, you shouldn't have to dig through this comma separated values transcript to catch that he's got this misleading quotation. It's ridiculous.
It's 100% misleading, right? So any defense of that is wrong, because regardless of whether you're on Christopher Bouzy's side or not, and you're welcome to be, you got to play straight. And you got to play straight with your readership and saying, well, I've got the source there. Okay, that's good. I'm glad you sourced it. But this is straight up misleading. This sounds different than what happened. You don't have to love that Umbrella Guy. Like I said, I don't think I've ever been to Umbrella Guy's channel. This is wrong. This is wrong. So when people call you out on that, I think the right play is to say, okay, we condensed for space. That probably comes across a little bit inaccurately. We apologize for that. I mean, people should fall on their swords more often, because I can be more sympathetic. When you double down and say this is accurate, now I don't believe anything in this at all.
Yeah, that's the problem. Is what a reasonable person would do is like, oh yeah, I screwed up the quotes. So you know what? We're gonna edit this, and I'm just gonna republish it with a little note. Editorial note, an earlier version of this had the quotes wrong. We corrected that. Yeah. Newspapers do that all the time, and that would be the reasonable response. But no, he doubled down and went nuclear. It was quite something to see, his meltdown.
You're going to be in the next one, Ian. You're going to be in the next report.
I know I am. But it keeps going if you look at it.
I want you to tell me about this one, because I didn't necessarily. You said you had something about the burner to the ground, and I hadn't seen that. What do you got?
So the context of this is he's saying, I know a lot of people are saying that Depp should let her get away with the sort of defamation, let her off the hook, but and I'm not going to say how Depp should run his finances or anything like that. And I'm paraphrasing here. But I think he should, burn her to the ground. If she's got a cat, he can seize the cat. If she's got hair extensions, he can seize the hair extensions. It's clearly a metaphor for the legal proceeding, right? Whereas when you present it with no context like this, it sounds like a threat of violence. It is obviously not a threat of violence in its original context. But I mean, that's why the context is gone, because otherwise it is a nothing burger, right?
Yeah, this is noticeable, especially when you've put your quotes out in these different ways, to have this so little in this quote box. Is like, what do you not want me to see right here? Now, note he applies all of this to a very specific harassment and cyberbullying policy. We just looked at those. Using an extreme insult to dehumanize an individual based on their intrinsic attributes. For example, look at this dog of a woman. She's not even a human being. She must be sort of a mutant or animal. So she's not dehumanized here. She's not dehumanized here. This is actually, as you said, this is a threat of violence. It doesn't go to this. So this is just a poor graphic to begin with. And what is this hand? Is this Johnny Depp's hand? Why is there a hand in the background? Anyway.
It's just stock art.
I want to know what the graphics thoughts process was, though. And then this is kind of almost a kind of defamation per se
There's
type.
a couple things to note about this one. So first,
Oh yeah, hit me.
look at the like video ID. There's that code for that at the bottom.
Okay.
Now scroll up and look at the one in the upper right.
Oh, that's the same.
That is the same because proofreading is not something we do here. The other thing.
Good call, Ian. Nice.
Well, the reason why I found this is because I was looking up the references and that made it a lot more challenging to find it because it's actually an entirely different video that's in. But also in the context of that bottom one is he actually references James Franco in that.
Okay.
He's saying that Franco has herpes and he suggests that maybe Amber might, that might have been unwise for her to have contact with him. And I'm going, but the suggestion is a different dude has the herpes.
All right. Okay.
And I'm going, you think you would not edit out the Franco reference there? Because that actually comes right in the middle of that quotation.
Wait, this quote that doesn't have an ellipses in its middle has an ellipses in its middle?
Yes.
Really? Wow. See, this is you and me, lawyers on YouTube. Why in the world are we the ones doing this analysis of these kinds of presentments? Rolling Stone has an entire journalistic organization. Why are they not just looking at these and confirming this? You've been presented with information. He put the source in. Go check it. You're putting up a national news story. What in the world? What in the world?
Yeah, I'm just trying to pull it up here just so I can get us the proper quote here.
Oh yeah, please do. I couldn't. Let's just say, folks, that Ian had a busy night, and I could not pull up all of his tweets and research because he was full on fighting the good fight, talking about accuracy and quotations, talking about getting blocked. I heard you got blocked by Mr. Bouzy.
Oh, well, he's a very special sort of coward because...
did he DM block you? I hate that one.
Well, what he did is he first was going through and as people were disagreeing or were agreeing with me, I noticed that he was blocking people who agreed with me as we were going. So he was trying to shape what his followers were seeing. And
if he blocks them, they don't see it as part of that conversation. Is that how that works?
Well, what it is that they can no longer add things to things, right? They can no longer step in.
Okay.
So he's basically shaping this discussion such that people are not able to sort of see what's going on there. That, he's making it look to his followers like there's this artificial agreement that just wasn't there. So I'm just looking here. I think I've found it here.
Okay. I just want to comment on this comment for a second. So while you find that, and you could share the screen, I can pull it up. Journalists only have to have a reasonable belief of it to be true at the time of sending it to print. It's how the tabloids get away with so much. I am not accusing them of defamation in Rolling Stone. I'm not saying they acted illegally. I'm saying they acted unethically. I'm saying that they should, before you put news out there. This is me. I'm a lawyer. I'm not a professional journalist. I don't want to put false stuff out there. I don't want to contribute to a sense of misinformation. I feel strongly about that. And so I'm saying that they should want to look at these things before they report on them, and that they clearly didn't. That's the difference. I'm not saying they defamed. Yes, you're right. You only have to have this certain level to avoid defamation charges. Absolutely. And Ian just shared this screen. So what in the world are we looking at, Ian?
If I can bring this in there.
Okay.
So it says we're saying Chad lips. I think that's the herpes. I think that's the what I call that. I call that James Franco. That's what you get when you mess around with James Franco, a little Franco now and then. We'll get herpes for you and your friends.
Well, that explains how wild this quote is. I think that's the we'll get herpes for you and your friend. That does.
Like they cut out the James Franco in the middle of that because that's really awkward for his whole thesis that, that I'm like, how do you cut out an entirely different person in the middle of this?
My goodness, Ian. Good job for you looking through the transcripts, man.
Well, and the thing is I didn't look through the transcripts of the other guy. And, some of the stuff he says is pretty noxious, but I'm going,
it is pretty noxious.
How do I believe this now?
Yes, that's the problem. That's the problem, right? When you go in and you do the site check on this stuff, and then you say, let's say you potentially say, you know what, Rick, you're being too generous with some of these. Some of these are really, really bad. That's fair, right? I could accept that kind of criticism. But after you look at how these quotes are treated, what are we can't take on faith, this stuff, right? We can't take on faith. Especially since, I'm pretty sure does YouTube, is this a direct reflection of what YouTube does to the transcripts? Do they blank out expletives? This is not something that the Hoeg Law YouTube channel knows.
I don't actually know, but
we could test that out on a different channel, Ian. But these look like YouTube
for us.
There you go. You're gonna go find one. YouTube. This looks like just YouTube images, which might be a little bit better in terms of not having to go through the Bouzy filter here. But you don't know what you don't know, and when you give up credibility like this, that is reflective of the rest of the report. And understand, even at what we're looking at right now, YouTube is a hotbed of misogyny and all the isms you can think of. He's basically focused on these two channels, and then he's focused on something completely different. So while Ian does whatever research he's doing on the YouTube transcribing of expletives content, let's look at the next section. We're going to try to go through these a little bit faster. An area of yeah.
I think it's actually, I think it's, we do need people to call out bad behavior on YouTube, bad behavior anywhere else. The problem is that if you are going, this is something that matters to me. Like, let's say you hate you hate Tug and you want to see him taken down because you think he's a bad dude for all this.
Yeah.
You deserve an honest, better person, because all of this makes Tug look good at the end of the day. Right.
Well, when he's getting railroaded, I mean, like, that's clear from those quotes.
I had people going, why are you defending Tug? And I'm like, I don't know Tug. It's not about Tug. It's about, to be honest about what we're doing here. And when you fake up these quotes, it's just like, because that's what this is. Like, when you stitch together a single paragraph out of stuff that happens 6.5 hours apart, that's just dishonest, right? That is just, so you can't lie to people and then expect them to take you on faith.
That's exactly the problem, right? That is exactly the problem is, hey, you're asking us to trust what you have said here, which honestly isn't a lot. We're going to see that filler. You see on the top of our screen here, 9 out of 35. And I'm not too worried about time. It's because 20 pages of this are not going to be interesting. But yeah, it's straight up. And that's, you combine that unfairness, that dishonesty in quotation with the targeted nature of this report. Those two specific channels are your platforms for this, and it starts to feel real bad. And no, this isn't about Tug. I haven't visited Tug. Tug could say all sorts of things. I don't know. So could that other guy. If any of that is true, doesn't sound like a YouTube channel I would be visiting. Yet, we still have to be honest brokers about this stuff. If you want to make your point, you got to make it honestly. Because otherwise, you get into this situation where I'm discounting everything you have to say, period. When you do stuff like that, when you play games with the actual important stuff that you're presenting, I can't review everything you present. And so I say, nah, that's the games player.
Yeah, it's, he's saying, oh, I linked the transcripts. Well, the transcripts don't back you up. And also,
good on you for that.
I can't be expected to spend however many hours reviewing, everything. And this is, lawyers learn this all the time. This is actually a message that they will hammer on you in law school, which is you get one chance to lose your credibility, and like you will never get it back in front of a court. You know, if you go and a judge catches you lying, you are going to have bad days in that courtroom for the rest of time. And, you know, I've never been in that position, but I've watched lawyers who are in that position, and they're just like, hey, so this is what, you know, this is the situation. The judge is like, where's your evidence of that? And you're like, you watch people going, well, you got to take my representation for it. The judge is like, not yours. I don't. Nope. And that just ends your career, right? That it makes it
jurisdictions.
Yeah, it makes it impossible to practice, and you know you can't do that. So, you know, lawyers have this bad reputation of being, you know, dishonest or whatever. As a lawyer, honesty is the thing that makes it possible to do my job. You know, and I've gone in and I've just been like, I remember one court case, I was like, and I'm presenting this case to the court, and the judge read through it, and he's like, this is not helpful to your case at all, Mr. Runkle. And it's like, well, I have an ethical obligation to present the law as it stands.
You're an officer of the court.
Yep. Here's a case that's bad for me. I'm going to proceed to argue why you shouldn't follow it, but properly you need to know it exists. And, you know, the judge did rule in my favor, although not in the way that I like, not for the reasons I asked him to.
Judges.
It surprised both me and the prosecutor. We were both like, well, that came out of left field. So, but at the end of the day, the judge was like, and I really respect that you brought that case to my attention because that's the proper thing to do. You know, that's the stuff that you do as a lawyer that you have to do because you can't like, I
think this is actually a good stopping point right this second to look at some super chats before we get back to the report. Secret McSquirrel, how will you get your pocket money from Dad with no super chats? Dad loves a super chat. Papa Hoeg, we love you. What can I say? Britt, lesson to be learned from this. Don't be an insufferable piece of work and maybe you'll get better press. I think that's a Meghan Markle reference. And yeah, here's the thing. Some people are going to be more popular than others. And sometimes it's not going to be based on their intrinsic attributes. Sometimes it's going to be based on their extrinsic ones, who they are as a person. I don't know Meghan Markle. I don't know. I feel like there should be a title that's added to Kate. I'll just say princess. She's a duchess of somewhere. My British friends will help me out. But maybe one's a nicer person.
There's a couple of videos on YouTube that are just attack pieces on me. And it's like, okay, I had somebody at one point send me one of these and it's like, what are you going to do about this? And I was like, nothing. He's got the right to not like me. That is perfectly okay.
Yes, it is. Sounds like that person lives a lonely life, but we can accept lonely people too.
Well, and they were like, they use all sorts of portions of your video. I'm like, well, how else would they attack me? Of course they are. So yeah, and he's like, well, aren't you gonna? I'm like,
I think co-counsel is yelling at me for not knowing the title for. It's like it's something of Wales. Britt Cormier, I love their idea of danger. It shows just how safe we are today. Danger used to be being eaten by predators if you separated them from the group. Now it is someone who wrote bad things about me online. Well, to some extent, social media and all these issues are kind of what we might otherwise describe as first world problems. There is some truth there. And yeah, Rolling Stone using the word danger here is interesting. It's not self-evident. Crazy Cat Queen, I don't want any profit-based company or journalist, especially Bouzy or Cat, telling me what to not read or view. I'd throw nonprofits in there too. You can have nonprofit people you don't want controlling your access to information either. But yeah, in general, we want to build people up here on our channels. We want you guys to make the decisions. Yes, we have our analysis. Yes, we will mark when we're editorializing. And then you can tell us, yeah, that makes sense, or you're an idiot, Hoeg. And either way, thinking about the process yourself is what it's all about. So thank you, Crazy Cat Queen. Britt, again, thank you so much for the super chats all day. Britt, when I see these quotes, I think, did he say some people online say insert quote? We know that we've quoted others for arguments, only for someone to quote us with he said the words. Yep.
Well, if you're willing to take portions from like 6.5 hours apart, you can pretty much make anyone say anything just by stringing together phrases like that.
Well, yeah, the true bad actor is just taking, the from here and amber from here, and you could whatever you like. You just one word at a time. One word at a time. Crazy Cat Queen says dog of a woman is the clean way of saying Brit is a bee. Yep, I think so. I do. Crazy Cat Queen, apparently just because you publish something on the internet, you can call yourself a journalist. Good to know. New career, here I come. Smiling teeth emoji and rolling on the floor laughing emoji. Yeah, a lot of people call me a journalist. And one of the things I try to correct people on is like, no, I'm not. I'm analyzing. I guess I'm giving op-ed type stuff, but I'm not creating the actual news on the ground. And so I don't consider myself a journalist at all. I'm more of a responder to things and reporter on that.
I've got journalism credentials in the Alberta courts, so technically I do have some powers for going into.
You can put the press thing in your hat band.
Actually, all it lets me do is record court proceedings if the court allows it, and then I can't publish that. All I can do is record it so that I can get quotes right. Okay.
You can't publish it nakedly. You have to pull quotes to write a story.
Yes, we don't televise our trials at all here. Technically, the court can allow it, but they just never do. Okay. But they do allow journalists sometimes to record things so that they can, make sure that they've actually got a quote correct instead of just winging it from memory.
Yep, that makes sense. Jeremy Morton, I don't even know what to say about this. The report and the Twitter exchange were ridiculous. They are, Jeremy. Thank you for the super chat. Absolutely.
Dragon. Wow, this guy went nuclear on that.
Facepalm emoji, the full Picard, sigh. So we are to trust mainstream media. I struggle with the monetizing issues they have with content creators when they cherry pick and add opinions to the facts. Yes, we are at the start of a new era of the media versus content creators. That's going to be an interesting one because we're involved here in this space. Ian's involved. A lot of our friends are involved on YouTube. And it's going to be interesting because they're clearly threatened by independent content creation, and we're going to continue to fight for it. This is an aspect of that, but only one part of it. So, we'll see. But thank you all for those super chats. I think we got one more that came in before we go and try to finish off this report. So I really do have a client call in 28 minutes. So we're going to try to figure it out. Kathy O'Toole Tugg started covering the JDAH trial 6 years ago in the UK. And his channel's older than that, right? I mean, he has done more stuff, I think. So you guys are trying to see if I'm going to miss this client call. Crazy Cat Queen, Ian, I bet you at least use ellipses properly if when you quote something from your recordings. Winky face emoji. I bet he does. And then Pick and Rick, good name. Kate is now Princess of Wales after Her Royal Highness Queen Elizabeth II's passing. Princess of Wales to go with Duchess of Sussex. I will try to remember these, but probably not. I have failed already. They are gone. All right, so let's finish this up. And the reason we can finish up the next 20 pages of the report is because we're going to go further and further afield from what the overall thrust of the article is. Yes, co-counsel, what's going on? I know it's Princess of Wales. Somebody nice in the comments did that without opening my door. All right. An area of focus for us was YouTube channels devoted to publishing malicious and defamatory content about Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex. These problematic channels often use deceptive titles, descriptions, and thumbnails to avoid scrutiny from YouTube's moderators. I don't even know if the after pop for moderators before you get into the next level of looking at things. Still,
I've heard, and I can't confirm this, but that they actually might be that moderators who look at thumbnails might actually be a different group from moderators who look at, because what I've heard is that there are people who just get like pages of thumbnails and then they just sort of scan through them, skim through them, and basically make sure that there's nothing that's,
graphic.
No eggplant, no peach, and beyond that,
I can't say it better than that, Ian. So they look at these channels, which are self-described by them as malicious and defamatory, which in and of itself might be defamatory, depending. But they describe them that way, and then all this is percentage of videos about Meghan Markle. It seems to me like you could have a topic that is the life and times of Meghan Markle, and that would be okay. It's not okay, as we saw in the YouTube guidelines, to have a channel that only does this in a negative way. But you have to make your case. You can't just say these are negative and look at how much time they spend on Meghan Markle and say, look, YouTube bans things that are negative without establishing how we got there.
Well, and also, like, I know there are some channels that have that all they talk about is Minecraft and have for like 8 years.
It's just their thing.
It's maybe not Minecraft hate speech.
Yeah, so look, I mean, we got 112,000 subscribers, 89,000, 43,000. Not a ton of separate subscribers. Big video views. Bigger than my channels. We just passed 8 million views. Ian. It was very exciting. Nice. So that's they're popular, but maybe not heavily subscribed to. And that's all they say about that. And then we go next.
Yeah, the rule there that he's citing again.
Yes, you can't be dedicated to focusing on maliciously insulting an identifiable individual. Interestingly, that's already banned, malicious insults. But it's like they do have a special rule. I think if I can find it, the Google stuff always goes right. It's
wondering if the identifiable individual has an exception for popular figures.
It does say here. We don't like insults based on protected group status if it were like raw racist commentary, regardless of whether or not they're a high-profile person. They don't say the opposite, which is that we don't care that much about high-profile persons if it's not a protected group insult, but it's implied by the existence of this note. Again, reading the YouTube rules is a fun thing to do if you're a lawyer because it's like, So yes, you are not allowed to have an account dedicated entirely to focusing on maliciously insulting an identifiable individual. Now note, if we're really lawyering here, entirely is not inclusive of the group that only reaches 91.9%. Yeah, not entirely.
Yeah, I don't think any of them hit 100% entirely.
Entirely is a specific word, Mr. Bouzy. If we're going to hold YouTube's feet to the fire, they're pretty specific. Just saying. Anyway, deceptive practices. YouTube channels focus predominantly on a single identifiable individual will often use misleading thumbnails and ambiguous video titles to avoid scrutiny from moderators. Again, you're both simultaneously taking credit away from YouTube and giving them a lot of credit to what they actually look at in these things. The Sue Smith channel employed similar deceptive tactics, again, calling out a specific channel with 43,000 subscribers after YouTube terminated and then reinstated the channel earlier this year. Although many videos use thumbnails of landscapes and celestial objects, the videos are primarily about Meghan Markle. This isn't the kind of channel I would watch where you just get a picture of like Hobbiton and they are at it again. But is that deceptive? It's content free.
Yeah, it's not. And the thing is you click it and they start talking about whatever, and then you click away if you don't like it. But mostly, if you have a video where the thumbnail is not attention getting, people just don't click it. Which is one of the things everybody on YouTube has had the experience. If you post up a video, you think it's a great video. It's got fantastic content.
I'm pumped.
And like 7 people watch it.
It's true. It's like you see my life, Ian.
Often that's because the thumbnail just didn't grab people. But the other thing is that, if you want to talk about royalty, guess who took most of the pictures of royalty? Yeah. Like paparazzi. And you know what the paparazzi want to use their pictures of the royalty on your YouTube video? Many dollars.
Yeah, you got to be super careful about pictures of people.
It's real easy to get sued because you use somebody else's, thing. So yeah, maybe you just use a landscape that you got off, a royalty-free, some royalty-free site.
And they could be visual puns. I mean, they really could. I don't know. I mean, like if you had the picture of a dock here underwater, I mean, like I could use a picture like that for like a company going under. I mean, like that's the kind of thing that I would do. So we don't know. But either way, is it deceptive? No, it's YouTube. And YouTube, this is silly, right? So here's an extra. Not allowed on YouTube. A thumbnail that misleads viewers to think they're about to view something that's not in the video. Nobody thinks that this video is about Hobbiton. Nobody thinks that this video is about, I don't know, an eclipse. You got Andrew Omid Harry and essay updates. Whatever that means, I think I know what it means. But that's pretty clear on the title. And the thumbnail is just like, come on, come visit. It's a podcast.
Yeah, the place where you get in trouble on this is if you put something like, video clip shows former President George Bush eating a puppy or something. And that's not in there. It's just, video footage of you twiddling your thumbs. Like that, YouTube will get annoyed at. But
right, I was thinking, it's like a secret final ending to The Last of Us Part 2 exposes the lies, and then it's it's just screenshots from SpongeBob SquarePants, whatever.
Or it's just you playing Last of Us 2, and then at the end of it, after people have watched this for like 4 hours, you're like, just kidding.
Like exactly. And then we get the final section here. I know it's only page 11, copyright infringement. During our research, we received a credible tip regarding several channels monetizing content taken from news outlets. A credible tip.
A credible tip. Like they asked a 14-year-old who just or literally any human who's been on YouTube.
Upon further review, we discovered a network of 22 channels with over 34,000 videos, many of which contain the content of articles taken from news outlets and read verbatim without crediting the source. Understand, this is pretty important. It's a network of 22 channels. So they put this list of things like British Royal News, British Royal TV, etc., and they are a network, right? So you pull this up, and apparently they're just reading news articles. I don't know. British Royal News has 14,000 subscribers. Its latest apparently has 124 views. I'm having a little trouble getting too excitable about this, but then it's clearly owned by the same group. Like it's one person using 17 different names. Runkle the Bailey has a second channel, to separate this stuff out. So what you found was one group, which may or may not, since I don't believe you anymore after the quote fiasco, be doing this very thing. And it's all just the same ownership with very small subscriber and very few view stuff. And this is starting on page 11. Again, remember, YouTube is a hateful place and we need to do something about it. Copyright infringement is really the newspaper's problem more than anything else. And we're going to cover it from page 11 on. Let's scroll, shall we? Again, as I said, the teacher said you had to get to 30 pages. So Christopher Bouzy was going to deliver 30 pages of YouTube videos that apparently copy articles from somewhere. Are we doing good? We're doing good, folks. Yep.
You need the clown music for when you're doing the scroll.
Yeah. So, yep, we keep going. Oh, and all right. Well, okay, we're getting back to substance. Oh, no, that was it. It's the conclusion. I went in, there should be a T-shirt that we give to Mr. Bouzy here that says, I went into YouTube to find bad speech and copyright infringement, and all I wrote was this.
Yeah.
I half want to take up the mantle and be like, I can do this better. And then the conclusions with just the information that you saw, just what you saw, folks. So don't take under advisement the rest of the knowledge you have about the internet or YouTube. Just what he has presented. He goes out with, YouTube has become a breeding ground for hate speech, misogyny, racism, homophobia, transphobia, xenophobia, and targeted harassment. Objection. In this report, facts, not in evidence.
It's like he heard about what happened to Kiwi Farms. And he's just like, now's my chance to take out Tug.
Right. And we talked about Cloudflare and their very interesting comments on all of that. But then we just get raw assertions. This is like reading someone's blog post of an angry screed about YouTube. And I'm not even saying this guy's wrong, but we should treat it with exactly the sentiment that we treat the guy shouting about YouTube on Reddit, which is, okay, my friend, this is a Wendy's, but carry on.
Yeah.
YouTube is being weaponized against women and marginalized communities, and YouTube's algorithms routinely recommend harmful content to its users. You didn't put anything asserting this in the report. You didn't talk about how YouTube operates at all, friend. And I think you could at least make a case here.
Yeah, there's a great argument to be made here. It's just, you gotta support it. You can't just assert it in your conclusion.
So where this kind of stuff gets traction is with the people that already believe it, which is fine. And like I said, he's a pro marketer, so more power to you. He's going to be seen. His assertions, this report is going to be seen by more people than are watching this video or will ever see it. So good on you. But do the work. Get the quotes right. Establish what YouTube's doing that's so bad and how it could be corrected. You don't do any of that. You found two guys that talk bad that you don't like. You misquoted at least one of them. You found somebody who's got a network of things that is just repeating things that are written in the Sun or wherever. Fine, that's bad. It's not really anybody's problem except those newspapers, but okay, there's copyright infringement on YouTube, News at 11. And then you made a 35-page report about it, and you get an exclusive interview in Rolling Stone, and they don't do their checking of the work, and that gets repeated from Rolling Stone, who doesn't check Rolling Stone's work, and on and on and on. And that's why headlines exist, quite frankly, because this stuff is bullshit. And that's why we talk about this stuff here. And
telling on himself here, because when you're like, YouTube is really good at showing you stuff that people who watch the same stuff as you like watching, or hate watch, but whatever it is, they watch it. And so it's like the people who are like, hey, I get nonstop advertisements for pee. And you're like, well, that says something about your browsing habits.
I did have some friends that ran a blog for Michigan football, and I was like, "Are your ads targeted? Because I'm trying to figure out what I did to trigger your ads." and he said, "Yes, they are." And I'm like, "I have no idea how they're connecting me to these particular advertisements, but I just thought I would let you know that they are right next to your articles." And so, just a note.
YouTube, if I go on there and I do a search for how to I did a search for how to replace the taillight in my model of car. And I got mechanic stuff for days. Like, it was just bombing me with like, here's how you fix a car. Here's how you rebuild an engine. Here's car repair fails. Here's like, it was just desperate to show me mechanic stuff. And I'm going
like a little puppy.
I changed the headlight, or I changed the taillight. We're good. But when he's
a car guy,
when he's saying YouTube is showing all of this harmful content, it's like, what are you looking at on YouTube, man? What are you looking up?
Right. No, exactly. And what's really funny is to watch those go cross-platform, right? I'll tweet something, and then it'll be picked up on my Amazon page. And then, one of the things you could probably see in the virtual legalities is that I bought a Hunt a Killer, which is like a murder mystery puzzle box for me and my wife. We like to do those kinds of things. And like, if you go look at virtual legalities, I think Hunt a Killer, it still might be, it's like, it was serving me up only Hunt a Killer ads, like on every article for like 2 weeks. And you can go see them in all of the videos that I did over that period of time. And that's, it's amusing. It's amusing. All right, let's finish this up because I got like 5 minutes, and then I got to get off, and then I got to prep for my call. In addition to harmful content, widespread copyright violations are often unaddressed. Thousands of YouTube videos contain content taken directly from news outlets. That's just true. Unless YouTube is proactive at removing harmful content, problematic channels will continue to flourish on the platform and use it to propagate content prohibited by YouTube's policies. Again, I'm not sure you've made your case there. If YouTube enforced its current policies and implemented stricter monetization protocols, there would be a significant reduction in harmful content. Channels with 60% or more of their content focusing negatively on an identifiable person should be strictly prohibited. So not just you should enforce your own policies. You've got a quantifiable line here. Okay, and not, by the way, maliciously insulting. Note that YouTube prohibits malicious insulting, focusing negatively. Whew. Now that's a slippery slope. What does that mean? If I have a channel that has a political bent and the opposite party is in the Oval Office, am I allowed to report? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, clearly you can identify the occupant of the Oval Office at any given time, presumably. Is that allowed now? I mean, political speech, we'd have to have a conversation, Mr. Bouzy. At the very least, YouTube should demonetize these channels to remove the financial incentive to continue producing malicious content. You didn't call for a malicious content prohibition up here, Mr. Bouzy. You called for focusing negatively. You got it. If you're going to write reports like this, if you're going to essentially be a think tank and advocate in white papers, you got to be careful with this stuff. You have to get your standards even. I mean, YouTube must also do better at safeguarding publishers' content. Yes, we're very worried about the multinationals not being able to police their own content. They're going to get by, Mr. Bouzy. They are. Channels shouldn't be allowed to steal content from publishers, read that content verbatim in a YouTube video, and then be rewarded for using the stolen content.
The thing is YouTube actually often demonetizes those channels
and takes the money and sends it elsewhere.
Yeah, like a lot of you actually can't necessarily tell if another channel is monetized because YouTube will run ads on demonetized channels. It's just that they don't give you the money. So there's a lot of those channels that are like, we read stuff off of Reddit with a mechanical voice.
Yep.
And a ton of those are demonetized. They just put stuff out there because they do.
Right, and I've used Content ID. I did a Star Wars trailer analysis, for instance, on this channel that I knew was going to get picked up because of the music usage. So that's one of the rare times I did video on this channel. It was immediately claimed and sent over, and I did that knowing that would happen, and that was part of what I agreed to. So if you can get the money in the right places, people can make those decisions and say, I have no ethical or other issue with saying I'm gonna use this, I'm gonna comment on it. It's probably fair use, folks, but I don't care. I'm not gonna fight it. And then they can go claim what they claim. And so, yes, if YouTube continues failing to moderate harmful content, protect women and marginalized communities from abuse, he brought in specifics here, and safeguard publishers' content, we will need more robust regulations and penalties to address this burgeoning problem. This sounds like rolling into YouTube headquarters and saying it's a nice platform here. It would be a shame if something happened to it. Like, that's what that last sentence sounds like to me. But that's the whole report. That's the whole damn thing, folks. We went through it all.
The other thing I just want to sort of mention here, Bouzy has a tweet where he says that I omitted pertinent information in his tweet talking about a disclaimer.
Okay.
If you got a second, just hit Control F on that, thing.
Yeah, what am I looking for?
The word disclaimer.
No, it's not there.
Yeah, it's not there because Bouzy is on Twitter lying his ass off. And sorry, I'll put some money in the square jar here, but because he's saying that that I left out that he put in this disclaimer, and no, that didn't happen. He
really,
yeah.
Okay, well, I mean, it's very hard to believe basically anything he says after looking at those quotes situation. And he just talks about everything. So I don't know that I'll be able to find this. Man, he is online, isn't he?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll leave it be. Certainly nothing is labeled disclaimer. If he's talking about something else, I didn't see it. I mean, we put eyes on everything here. You will note that the Rolling Stone article, nope, that's the wrong one. The Rolling Stone article actually has a reference to him, to his firm being paid by Amber Heard's team. It isn't in what we just read because it isn't there, but it will get added, and they will note it. They're not the Washington Post, as we like to say here. They actually mark when they made this change, but that is an enormous oversight to miss in the initial pass of the article as it stands. Right? We talked about Variety being good because they noted it in their headline. You don't necessarily have to note it in your headline, but it wasn't included much at all in their original report. That gets added in an update. And there we go. That is an almost 2.5 hour long Hangouts and Headlines here. We got a couple of super chats. Nicole, just want to say thank you to Hoeg and Ian. Go to bed. You crazy Al.
On your phone call there.
Yeah, we're gonna make it. We can law. It's gonna be okay. Carrie Harvey for the swear jar for Runkle. That's very generous of you. Thank you, Carrie. Thumbs up emoji and an elf emoji. Thank you so much. Ian, first of all, thank you so much for spending so much time here at the very end of your day from yesterday. People, please do check out his video on his channel. I will link it. It might be after my call, Ian, after this conversation, but it will be in the description ultimately. And of course, Ian is one of the wonderful members of the Lawyers and Dragons troop here every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. We've got some more stuff to do there. Ian, what else you got going on? What do you want to send people to?
Oh, you know what? At this point, I probably just want to send myself to bed, but check out that video and watch us on Lawyers and Dragons because Gimlet is in a whole pile of trouble and I don't know how I'm going to get him out of it. So that'll be fun.
All right, Snoopykins, no time for this super chat. Get going. I am going to do that. I'm going to go practice some law. Thank you, everybody. I'll be reading through the comments after all of this to see what all the conversations was about, as I like to do. I know co-counsel has mentioned that I do that. I do that for all these videos. So I will see what you all were talking about. Don says this is how long Hangouts and Headlines should be, so I'm awake. I do my best, but I do have a 10 o'clock. I have to go. Everybody, thank you so much, and I will see you tomorrow on Hangouts and Headlines and any videos I do between now and then.